IB Nation, welcome back to another episode of the Irish Breakdown Podcast. Happy Wednesday, everybody, and you guys know what that means here for us at Irish Breakdown. Mr. Driscoll, it is buy, sell, hold time today, and that is something that we like to do for our premium message board members. You can find that scrolling at the bottom of the screen there, boards.irishbreakdown.com. Basically, what this is our premium message board members comment in a thread started by our guy Salty, and you basically propose a scenario or a situation that Brian and I will either buy, sell, or hold after we have a little bit of a discussion about it. Now, if you did forget to put in your buy, sell, hold, you can always put in a super chat and we'll make sure that we get that answered. But as always, our recommendation is save your money on the super chat, take that money, subscribe to the premium message boards on either a monthly or an annual membership. You can submit as many buy, sell, holds as you want. And to the surprise of nobody, we have another really great week of submissions today, Brian. I'm ready to jump into it. We have a lot of great things to discuss today, man.
We do, man, and some very interesting submissions. Some that I think this person's taking the opposite view of what they actually think to try to see how we're going to go. And a lot. I mean, even though D Troll Hunter's on vacation and got no questions in today, slacker. We still had 50 different cards, so that's why we're a little bit late as I was finishing up all the great cards that you all put together. But I am ready to rock and roll, Trev. So we're going. I mean, look here, just real quick. If news breaks during the show, we're not anticipating it, but we know that there's going to be guys hitting the portal between now and Friday, or at least now and the end of the weekend, because they have to submit by Friday. But Notre Dame has 48 hours to kind of get it all processed and all that kind of stuff. So there may be things break. Most likely what we'll do is kind of get to it at the end of the show after the buy, sell, hold, depending on who it might be. And we're not saying who it might be. I'm not saying that I know anyone's going to do it today. I'm just saying, like, if it happens because of the window we're in, that's true for the next couple days. If it's, we'll most likely kind of do it after whatever segment we're working on. So just want to give people a heads up on that. But Trev, without further ado, man, I think it's time to get rocking and rolling with our first submission. Now, the privilege we give Salty, since he's the one that creates the card, we let him get first dibs on submitting the first buy, sell, hold. So let's go. It's a good one to start.
Good deal from our guy Salty Virginia Peanuts. Buy, sell, hold. The snaps accrued by Riley Leonard as a rusher will not, as some contend, be redistributed amongst the running backs, but in large part, about 90% will instead be pass plays. The prime beneficiaries will be the great one, likely leader in receptions, Malachi Fields, likely the leader in total yards, and one of these two, with Great House favored, leading in touchdowns.
I forgot to switch that over to Great House. That's my bad. I'm going to sell this. I don't think that it's going to be – we've kind of talked about this, Travis. We've said, look, all these carries that Riley Leonard had are not all going to go to the running back. Some of them will go to the pass game. But I think the idea that you're going to have the same set number of plays as last year, and these X number of carries are they're just going to go to the pass game, I think is misguided. I also think it's misguided to just assume that those carries and the set number of plays is just all going to go to the run game. I think what I anticipate happening with this team this year is a more efficient overall offense, that you're just going to see more plays overall. And so some of those carries will get distributed to running backs. Some of those carries will get distributed to the pass game. And then there will be additional carries and pass attempts because Notre Dame is going to be a more efficient offense. I think that is what I believe to be most likely. And I don't think that the carries from Riley Leonard are going to 90% go to the pass game, because when I look at this offense, Trev, I see an offense that obviously is going to still be balanced, still going to run the ball a lot. It's not going to be a team that's going to drop back and just chuck it all over the field. I think you're going to see things. I think you're going to see things a certain way that is going to kind of split it a little bit. But I think more of those things are going to go to the pass game, because part of it too is when you look at Riley Leonard's carries, not all of those are run carries. Some of those were pass game carries. So if the offensive line protects better, then even if Riley Leonard was still the quarterback, you'd see more of those carries get distributed to the pass game, because he would lose all those, some of those scramble yards, and then obviously scramble attempts and then sack attempts. So I would kind of go there with that one. Is I'm going to sell it because I don't think it'll be anywhere close to 90%. I think it'll be more 60-40, 50-50 of those snaps being distributed both ways. I'd say probably 60% go to the running backs, 40% go to the pass game is how I would distribute that. Because, again, you're going to have better passers at quarterback this year, but they're still going to be first-year starters that haven't played a ton of football. You're not just going to go out there and say, okay, CJ, let's head down to Miami and throw the ball 50 times in the heat. Like, if you're throwing the ball 50 times, most likely you're either blowing them out or you're getting blown out. And I would lean towards getting blown out if you're throwing the ball 50 times. So that would probably be a bad thing. So I'm selling that distribution. The beneficiaries of whatever numbers are, Jaden Greathouse is the leader in catches, Malachi Fields leader in yards, and then one of those two leader in touchdowns. I buy that part. I mean, that's certainly something that I believe will be true. But I also think you're going to see some of those things go to Eli Raridan, and some of those are going to go to still go to the running backs, just in the running backs in the pass game.
I think the better narrative that fits the 90% will be, I think 90% of what Riley Leonard's scramble carries are going to be distributed amongst either the pass game and or sacks. But overall carries, I mean, we're talking about a guy that, what did he have last year? Like 184 or something carries. I don't see that equating to 160 more pass attempts over the course of the season. I think a lot of it's going to be distributed amongst the running backs. You and I see that the same, Brian. I'm selling this as well. Buy, sell, hold from B-Jam and 41. CJ Carr will finish his career with more combined touchdowns than Riley Leonard. For reference, Riley Leonard had 63 career touchdowns.
I want to look at that one real quick because that number surprises me that he only had 63 career touchdowns. He had 45 rushing touchdowns, and he had 45 passing touchdowns, and he had 36 rushing touchdowns. So that's 81.
Yep.
Correct?
Yep.
I wonder if he's looking at the Duke numbers. Maybe. I'm not quite sure where that number comes from, but Riley Leonard had 81 total touchdowns in his career, 45 passing, and then 36 rushing. I think CJ Carr surpasses that. So even the accurate number, I think he surpasses that. Yeah, by that. Because I mean, I'm not someone who just assumes that CJ Carr is going to be a 3-and-done player. I don't know that that's necessarily true. It's possible. I think it's possible also that he stays 3 years. So I'm assuming CJ's going to stay at least until his true senior year. Like, I don't think there's any chance CJ Carr comes back for a 5th year if he's the starter this year. But I anticipate him having about 30 touchdowns this year as his first-year guy. 26 passing, 4 rushing over the course of a 14 to 16 game season. Sure. Yeah. So I buy that.
Yeah, I'm with you. Because of the amount of games that they'll play, I think that he will. So I'm with you there. Buy, sell, hold. Malachi Fields' best Notre Dame comparison is Maurice Stovall.
I don't hate that. I still like the Miles Boykin one a little bit better, just because I think the way that they used Miles is more of a vertical player. If you wanted to use Mo Stovall, what you could do, however, is he is a combination of how Mo was used early in his career under Ty as sort of a big downfield guy as a freshman, and then how Mo was used as a senior under Charlie. That I could see. That I could buy. But and it's not like Mo didn't run downfield. I mean, he caught post routes and big plays and had a big old seam catch for a big play against Ohio State in the Fiesta Bowl. But I still think Miles Boykin is still a little bit of a better comparison from a usage standpoint. I don't hate the Mo Stovall one. I loved Mo Stovall. I just think they're just a little bit more different than him and Miles are. That's just kind of where I'm at. But I don't hate that one at all.
Yeah, I see where you're coming from with that one, B-Jam. And I am also in the Miles Boykin kind of camp as far as comparisons. Maurice Stovall, he's a little bit taller, might be a touch faster, but, that's kind of where I'm at.
You think Mo is faster than Malachi?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think Malachi's faster than Mo Stovall was. Yeah, I think Mo ran like a 4.6 something, I think, at the combine. I think Malachi will be in between Miles and Mo. So it'd be interesting.
Buy so hold from BJam 41. USC with Lincoln Riley is what Texas A&M was when they had Jimbo Fisher. Great recruiting, high preseason expectations, but they never live up to the hype. And ultimately, the school will go in a different direction despite the huge buyout, $88 million.
I can buy that to a degree. I could buy that based on what we're seeing with recruiting right now. But my whole thing is they haven't signed any of these guys. His overall recruiting has been very mediocre. And that's why I think I'd buy it or sell it. Is part of me wants to sell it is because I don't think they've had great recruiting. And they're recruiting extremely well now, but they've yet to get to, I mean, they're 9 months away from, what are we, month 4? So we're 8 months away from signing day. Let's see how many of these guys sign, if they have a good year, bad year, whatever the case may be. So, but I understand what you're saying. If you're just going to say Lincoln Riley now with Chad Bowden there, sure, I buy that. But I just need to see those guys sign. But you know what's funny is you know what? Actually, I'm going to sell this overall because there's two things that I ultimately don't agree with: the recruiting piece and also the high preseason expectations. The expectations for USC this year are very low. Like not even everyone has them in the top 25. I think the media has kind of caught on a little bit to USC being soft under him. And they're not a SEC team, so they're not going to get the same level of preseason hype that A&M got. If USC would have joined the SEC, they'd be ranked higher right now preseason in the media. That's just the reality of it. But I mean, Trev, you and I have looked at several preseason top 25s, and I don't believe USC is ranked in all of them. And when they are ranked, it's usually like in the 20s most of the time. So I don't know that that's high preseason expectations. I would not personally have USC in the top 25 preseason. They got to show me. They got to earn it. 2 years in a row of being a not top 25 team, you got to prove to me you're a top 25 team first. So I'm gonna sell in that regard. But the last part I could see. I could see that going in a different direction because you're just like, yeah, this isn't going to work. Like I can see them saying, like, look, D'Anton Lynn's the only competent thing we've got going on right now. Let's try and keep him, as a head coach or something. I don't know. I'm not a huge Lincoln Riley fan, and I don't know that he has what it takes to fix this, but we'll find out, right? We'll find out.
Yeah, you and I see that the same. I mean, even with Jimbo, outside of the 1 year where he had that number 1 overall recruiting class at Texas A&M, were his other recruiting classes like
they had several other top 5 type of classes.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean they were almost always top 10.
Okay,
but they'd be overrated. They'd be high 4s, and yeah.
I got you. Buy so hold. Running back Jeremiah Love will hurdle safety Kennedy Urlacher for a touchdown in a primetime game at Notre Dame Stadium, and it will be one of the many highlights from an incredible 2025-2026 national championship season that IB Nation talks about for years.
I'm going to sell the first line and then buy everything else. I don't want to see Jeremiah Love doing a lot of hurdling this year because I'm just worried that teams are going to be more prepared for that, and he's going to get flipped upside down a couple times. And I don't want to see that happen. So I hope that he's kind of prepared for that and people try to go high on him and he does what he did to Indiana. Remember the second time he was running the perimeter and that guy thought he was going to hurdle him, and so he just kind of waited and stiff-armed him into the ground?
Yep.
I hope we see more of that than the hurdling.
Yeah.
But the rest, I'm sure I'm by that. It's going to be a primetime game at Notre Dame Stadium. Will be one of the many highlights from a championship season. IB Nation is going to talk about it for years. I'll buy all that, baby. If you can't buy that in April, man, I don't know what to tell you. But no, I buy the rest of that. It's certainly possible. I'm excited about that. Would love for that to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Buy sell hold from Mr. Emil Wagner. The fact there will be no Saturday playoff games after the first round this year is another indication that college football is gradually getting away from the long-standing traditions that make college football great. I'm
going to sell that. I think it's dumb that they don't play more Saturday games. Like, I do think that's dumb. Like, I buy the spirit of your question. The reason I'm going to sell that is because we haven't had Saturday postseason games in forever. I mean, January, except when like January 1st was on a Saturday. Mm-hmm. I mean, like the postseason has been more about the day, January 1st. And so a lot of this stuff is built around having a playoff game on January, multiple playoff games. What is it? All the quarterfinals are on January 1st, right? I mean, this year. So let me pull up the article I wrote yesterday on that, because I actually wrote an article on that. Let's see here.
one of them might be on New Year's Eve.
I thought that was the first round. They have the two different dates. Let me just look. I'll go look at it. But no, you're correct. The Cotton Bowl will be on the 31st, and then you'll have the three games the next day, noon, 4, and 8. So you are correct. So that's kind of what they've been doing for a while. It's the New Year's Eve, or it's the New Year's games. That is, if anything, that is the closest thing that we have to tradition. Yeah. They're playing major bowl games on January 1st. Yep. I think it's dumb to not then, get back to being on Saturdays and things like that after that. I understand they're afraid of the NFL and all this other kind of stuff, but I'm with you. I'm with you. I don't see. I think it's dumb that they have games on Thursday. I mean, the semifinal games are on Thursday and Friday, and then the championship games on a Monday. But the championship game for my entire life has only ever been on a Saturday. When it was like when I was young, just so happened when the first was on a Saturday, and even then they weren't even really championship games because you still had to have the voting. Like when Notre Dame beat West Virginia, you knew they were going to be the champs, but it's not like they hand them the national championship trophy after the game. They still had to vote on it. So that part I'm going to disagree with. Like, I do think they should be playing more games on Saturdays, but the fact that they're still playing on the first, and then they kind of build the rest of the schedule around those games in the first, I think is actually the one thing they do that sticks to tradition. And the fact that they have those games as bowl games. Like, look, I felt like I was at the Orange Bowl last year. It was a little different. When they did the semifinals, like in the Cotton Bowl in 18 and the Rose Bowl in 20, they didn't feel like bowl games. They felt like playoff games. I don't know. Maybe it's because there's more teams in it this year. So it feels more like a bowl game. Maybe, I don't know. It was kind of weird that way, but I felt it was more like that than in the past. So I'm going to sell that for those reasons.
Yeah, I'm with you. Look, the only thing that I want to see change, I'm happy that they're still doing the New Year's Eve, New Year's Day stuff. I don't think that there's a reason for the national championship game to be a Monday.
That late? It's so dumb.
Yeah, I hate that. I absolutely hate that. Look, I understand the NFL has Saturday and Sunday, but look, I know the NFL draws more numbers week over week than what college football might, but I gotta believe that, and maybe the numbers are wrong, but I feel like more people would tune in for a national championship game than they would the AFC wild card on Saturday.
Right.
That's just me.
Or work with the NFL and say, hey, we're gonna kick off at 8:00. You guys kick off at noon and 4 or something, or 1 and 4. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, Monday Night Football has been a huge staple of the NFL for quite some time. Make that a playoff thing. It's like, hey, playoff on Monday Night Football. College football on Monday night. That's gross. So, yeah, that's the only thing I want to see change. But I get where you're coming from, Mr. Meal. I do. Buy, sell, hold. The portal is a hindrance to most teams, but not for Notre Dame under the Marcus Freeman era due to one thing: transparency.
I buy the Notre Dame part for sure. I think that we have not seen Notre Dame suffer the big losses so far in the portal that other teams have. I'll buy that. And I think a big part of that is transparency. But it's not the only reason. I mean, there's kids at Notre Dame that want to stay because I think the way that they recruit is part of that. I think the kids understanding that, people say, well, kids don't care about academics. Well, I know for a fact over the last 4 or 5 years, there's been several players that have waited a year to transfer because they wanted to get their degree. So don't tell me that young people don't care about that. Some don't. That's always been true. I'm the son of 2 high school dropouts. I mean, it's like they were both successful business owners, but they didn't care about academics when when they became parents, they sure did, but they weren't. And that's the 60s and 70s. I mean, it's the 70s, so there's always been that. But I think there's a lot of reasons for it, but I also think there's a lot more teams that the portal has a hindrance to, but there's also a lot of teams the portal is a huge benefit to. Indiana doesn't hire Kurt Cignetti and go to the playoffs if not for the portal. Not even close. I don't know that Ohio State plays for the championship last year without the portal. I don't know that, we've talked already. We've established that it's been great for Notre Dame. Does Ohio State I mean, I can't count the whole. I mean, Ohio State doesn't lose a lot of the guys they want. They lose backups, but they haven't lost Jeremiah Smith's not jumping in the portal and Emeka didn't jump in the portal. I mean, their top guys are staying and then they add to it. So I think the best teams, the portal's been a benefit to them. But, some of the best teams, but there's other teams where it's been like Oregon doesn't lose a lot of their dudes. Don't jump in the portal. Their backups do. But I think the top teams has benefited from it well. Those teams also understand how important it is to pay their own players. That's a big part of it as well.
Yeah, transparency is definitely a factor. I will say Marcus Freeman talked about
one.
Yeah. But Marcus Freeman talked about something today in his press conference where he's like, look, there's definitely talent that we can go out that improves maybe the state of the program, but it might not improve the environment of a room. And that's something that we have to evaluate. So I think Notre Dame does a really good job of evaluating the off the field stuff. Not saying that all players with high talent are, locker room issues or anything like that, but they have a really good read on who their team is and what the team culture is. I think that's kind of the driving force of this, along with transparency and really doing it to supplement your roster, not to build your roster. There's a lot that goes into it, but I get it.
And the comment he made, I was glad he made that comment today. He said, we're not really actively looking for anyone in the portal right now. No. And he's correct. I mean, that's what I've heard. There was a report about a defensive end that Notre Dame was talking to. And I did my, reached out to the people that I talked to and they're like, look, this is, this is not how this is portrayed is not really accurate. And there's certain things that we have to do to kind of protect ourselves and guard ourselves just in case. But, it's like how it's portrayed, like we're going after that kid's not accurate because we like our room and we don't want to mess up our room. Now, if something happens and a D-end or two jumped in the portal, they need to make sure that they have done their due diligence to be prepared to make a move if they needed to make a move. But it's like, where would you go at a guy? And also, too, it's like of the guys that have jumped in the portal, who moves the needle for you? Like maybe a receiver. But what did that receiver jump in the portal for? To go somewhere he could win more? He was at a team who won 10 games. To go somewhere he can catch more passes? He caught over 80 passes last year. He's jumping in the portal because he wants to get paid. That's it. That guy's not going to come in and be down for the struggle of your football team and what you got to go through. Got to be careful with that. And I'd be okay looking at some depth players if you lose some guys, but it's like, where can show me someone in the portal that can improve the roster? Well, I have people, well, what about this D tackle? Well, tell me how that guy was better than the guys they have last year. I mean, you can't. And so I like where they're at. I really don't feel that that's something that's necessary. We did have a Bisa hold, Trevor, and it was from ND Milton fan. Thank you for the super chat, ND Milton fan. He says, Bisa hold, Trevor is the best griller at IB.
I'm by it. I'm a very confident cooker, griller. I throw down, dude. So I don't think that's a slight to anybody else, but I'm very confident.
I'm super offended now, Trevor. No, if you are not the best griller, it's not because I'm better. I can assure you of that. I'm not a huge grill. Like I'm fine, but I'm not like, oh my God, you got to come over. I'm doing all these amazing things on the grill. I prefer to cook over stove and stuff like that. But I think Sean Davis or maybe Vince or maybe Sean Stiers might have a beef with you, but I don't have a beef with you. So we've talked about it. And I'm like, yeah, you do more grilling than I do. I didn't even get my grill out last summer, which is kind of sad that I didn't. But yeah, I didn't get my grill out last summer. I'm going to have to change that this year.
So one thing that I hate about living in an apartment complex, we have community grills, but man, I miss when we rented a house and I could have my own grill. Oh,
you'll have to come over one of these times you're in town and I'll have you clean up my grill and get it all ready and have you do some grilling.
Deal.
It'll be fun.
Deal.
It'll be real fun.
Bisa hold again from Mr. Emil Wagner. Napoleon Kaufman is one of the most intriguing players in football history. A 4.3 40-yard dash, bench press of 420 pounds. In college, he had 4,106 yards, 34 touchdowns. In the NFL, he played only 6 years at 47.92 yards, 12 touchdowns, also 127 receptions for 1,107 yards and 5 touchdowns, and returned 98 kickoffs for 2,149 yards and 1 touchdown. Not to mention, retired from the NFL in his prime to be a minister?
Sure. I mean, he was on Washington's championship team, and he was at Washington when they had some really good teams. He's a really good college running back. He had I think he was the guy who had the brutal knee injury on Monday Night Football. I think that was him. Let me look that up. But no, he's a very, very interesting story. Let me see here. Monday Night Football injury. But I remember watching that. We were, it was. We were living at a campground at the time, and like the only TV we had where we were staying was like this little TV in like the pop-up tent. So I would go down to this like restaurant place down the street, and if I wanted to watch a football game, and I remember watching that on TV, and I was like, oh God, that was brutal. Like it was a really bad one. But yeah, I mean, very, very interesting career. I mean, you look at, like you said, what he did in the NFL, and I think that ended up having 1,000-yard season after that injury. So he had a nice NFL career, very good college back, and then now he's a minister. So sheds. I don't know about like NFL history, but it's a very, very intriguing player. I mean, I'll buy that. Sure, I'll buy that. And I love the fact that he's, now literally doing the Lord's work. You know what I mean? So like, yeah, I'll take that. I'll
buy from the stat line. To be fully honest, I have no idea who that is.
It was Napoleon McCallum. Thanks, Ronnie. It was Napoleon McCallum that had the bad knee injury, not Napoleon Kaufman. It's Napoleon McCallum. So thank you for that. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll buy it from the stat line. I don't know who Napoleon Kaufman is.
Yep. He was way before your time. He was a freshman when Washington won their national title in 91. Yeah, Ronnie Reeve said it was Napoleon McCallum, who also played for the Raiders. So it was not Napoleon Kaufman,
Gotcha.
Napoleon McCallum. So thank you for that, Ronnie.
Buy, sell, hold from ND Lou 22. The USC game this year will be the most complete game Notre Dame plays this year, given the talent and depth disparity and Notre Dame's motivation going in.
I'll buy that. Go ahead, Trey.
I'm going to hope sell it. Like, I hope the most complete game they play this year won't be on October 18th. I hope it's on January 20th. Like, sorry.
I get that.
I mean, I don't – based on USC and what Notre Dame doesn't have to play a complete game to run them out of the building. I say that emphatically. So that's where I'm at with it. But I love the spirit of the submission, ND Lou.
Yeah. I'll buy it because I think usually your most complete game comes against an inferior opponent. I mean, it's very rare you see a team play like Georgia TCU 2022. Like, okay, sure. That's not normally how it goes. Normally, like one side of your ball's got to like not playing great, and you've got to, But I hope you're right, Trev. But I'm buying it. I'm buying it because I think there's going to be a little extra motivation for that one, and it's an inferior opponent, so you're going to have a better chance of playing more of a complete game.
Buy, sell, hold. The majority of Notre Dame transfers out will start for the team they end up on.
Buy. Yeah. I mean, I think most of the kids leaving are leaving because they've got something worked out somewhere where they're going to go play.
Yeah.
Yeah, I buy that. I said majority too, so I buy that.
Yep. Buy, sell, hold from ND for life. The new injury rule changes for this upcoming season will enhance the game.
I buy that. So, like, basically my understanding of the rules, essentially, if once the ball's spotted, if the trainer has to come out, you get charged a timeout. I don't know that's going to stop some of the stuff, and like it's not going to stop some people because some coaches are going to be totally fine taking a timeout, like get charged timeout because it still slows down the momentum of the situation, and you actually get more time than just an injury than just a normal timeout because they have to do the injury thing. You're still going to see fake injuries. You're just not going to see as many. And it's going to be reserved for usually like late half and late game drives when you have timeouts to spare. That's my reading of it, essentially. So it will clean up to a degree. They didn't go as far as I would have liked to have seen. I would like for them to have said, like, also, and I don't think they've addressed this, is like, look, once like whether the play clock gets to a certain point or like once the ball has been spotted, you can't sub in and sub out. like, or I mean, you got to be careful of that because, but like once you hit, 15 seconds in the play clock, you can't sub in and sub out, and eliminate some of that stuff. And, I mean, and then like there has to be some level of you get basically like, have the refs kind of do like a 3 Mississippi count, like when there's a sub in and a sub out, like you get, I'm going to count to 3 or 4 Mississippi. You better get your butt to the sideline instead of just like slow, walk to the sideline and call. I mean, that's nonsense. Like the other team didn't walk their guy in off the sideline. You don't get to walk your guy off, you know what I mean? And have some awareness, have some alertness as a coaching staff to get your guy in. You see them run the guy in, you run the guy in. So I'd have some things like that, but this is a decent first step. So I'll buy that.
By so hold, Notre Dame will utilize a 2-quarterback system throughout the season. For example, CJ Carr starts, but Kenny Minchey comes in on red zone or goal line plays.
I buy it as a possibility. I don't know that I'm not as locked in that that's definitely going to happen as some people are. Again, I don't know that Kenny Minchey's the kind of dynamic runner that you need to do that for. I don't know that I can justify saying I'm going to get Kenny Minchey to football instead of Jeremiah Love or Jadarian Price or Keedron Young. I have a hard time with that. I think it'll happen at times, but I don't think it's going to be like throughout the season, every time this happens. Like that would surprise me a little bit. Not a ton, but a little bit. Unless it's one of those things that they had to do to convince Kenny Minchey to stay. Then, okay, I kind of get it. But I don't know that Kenny Minchey needed that to stay. I think he'd rather just stay and compete, be the starter, try to be the starter at Notre Dame. But yeah, so I'm going to sell that because I just don't think it's going to be all the time. I do think there's a time and a place for that. I mean, I think it's like if you got a kid as talented as Kenny Minchey, I think it'd be foolish not to do something with him. I just don't think it has to be all the time. That's kind of where I'm coming from on it.
Yeah, I get that. I'm with you. If anything, I'd rather see it on like third down situations, like third and short, not just in the red zone or goal line, because Kenny can stretch the field vertically with his arm.
Yeah. And no, Marcus Freeman did not put that completely to rest at the press conference today. He made it very clear there's going to be a starter. But he also said in Trev, you got the transcript. So did you have that in your article?
No,
okay.
No.
He basically was like, we're going to have a starter, but he didn't completely dismiss it. No. I think he said it in a way where his reaction was kind of similar to mine. Like, I don't know if that's something we're going to do all the time, but that also is because right now, if you also have to think about Marcus Freeman also has to play the game a little bit. If he says, yeah, we plan on doing that, then what's he admitting? He's admitting then CJ Carr is the starter.
Yeah.
I think his focus is on like right now we're worried about these two kids battling, and then we'll figure that out after the fact. Is basically how I took his comment.
Well, because it's always this scenario. It's if CJ starts, because there's no scenario that if Kenny Minchey starts, you have a CJ Carr package, because then that would just be your passing offense.
Right. Because Kenny Minchey doesn't need someone to come in when they need to throw the football. He can throw the football.
Right.
Like you don't need like a 2-minute CJ Carr package because Kenny Minchey is that guy. Mm-hmm. He's not a guy that's going to go out there and he's just running all the time and can barely throw. He's not Reggie Ball or, Devin Dampier, the kid from New Mexico we were talking about the other day. That's not who he is. He's a legitimate passer who's also athletic. Yeah. So I agree. But I do feel if he would have been like, oh, yeah, we plan to do that, or we've talked a lot about that, then he's basically saying like, well, CJ's the guy. And I don't know that, that they necessarily believe that. And I definitely don't think if they did believe it, they'd want to express that publicly.
Yeah.
At this point in time.
Bisa hold from Domer Grizz. Chase Claypool would have made a bigger impact at Notre Dame if he had moved to defensive end.
Not even kind of. So I'm selling. I've never sold something as with the vigor with which I'm selling these two things. His second one is Chase Claypool would have had a longer NFL career at the end. Selling both of them incredibly, like with a lot of angst, because now I know he was built like one, but number one, if Chase Claypool wasn't tough enough mentally or physically really to dominate in the NFL as a wide receiver, he was not going to do that as a defensive end. Like, no way. No way. Now, Could Chase Claypool have played defensive end at Notre Dame? Yeah, he played defense in high school, and he was pretty good, and he's 6'4", 235 pounds. He would have built up even more as a defensive end, but he wouldn't have been nearly as good of a defensive end as he would have been a wide receiver. Not even close. Not even close. And he had a pretty phenomenal last couple of years, especially his last year at Notre Dame. I mean, by the second half of the 2018 season, he was the best receiver they had. I mean, Miles had more yards because of early in the season, but second half of the year, Chase was every bit as good, if not better, than Miles was. In 2019, he was excellent. So I'm selling that with I'm putting some stank on it.
Yeah, I'm just good to move on to the next part. I don't.
You know what? I like that he's thinking outside the box, though. I can dig that. I can dig that. It's good discussion. But I'm pulling the heck out of it still.
Yeah. Buy-sell hold from Ballpeen Shillelagh. Let's assume that on the year the starting Notre Dame quarterback gets concrete feetitis and has net negative rush yards through the season. Given this scenario, Notre Dame still has a good chance to make a deep playoff run again.
Sell. Well, I don't think that Notre Dame's going to be a very good team this year if their quarterback has negative rushing yards. I think that would look. I'm not saying that CJ Carr, if he's the starter, like if Kenny Minchie's the starter and that happens, they're cooked. The only scenario in which this would happen is if CJ Carr was a starter, and I still don't. I mean, will he be 200 yards rushing? Maybe 300 yards rushing, maybe 500. I don't think so. But to be minus, I mean, I can't see. I don't see that. Yeah, I don't see that. I'm trying to think like Jack Cohn had minus 100 yards rushing in 2021, and he's way less mobile than what CJ Carr is. And that was a terrible offensive line that at one point in time didn't get better till their fourth left tackle took over. That's when things got better. Think about that. Joe Walt was the fourth left tackle they turned to that year. Right? So all the people like, line coaches never make mistakes. Okay, sure. Jeff Quinn thought it was a smart idea to put redshirt freshman Michael Carmody and redshirt freshman Tosh Baker at left tackle before he decided to put Joe Walt. Well, Joe Walt looked pretty good when he took over. So you're telling me he never showed that until he was put in the starting lineup, or the week he got put in the starting lineup, just miraculously got better that week? No. Coaches make mistakes too. And even then, he was minus 100. Like, I'd be shocked if CJ is that bad at, running that he's not able to be in the plus category. Like where was Notre Dame this year? Lost 134 yards in rushing. 2023 with Sam Hartman, they lost 126. Considering that was 3 less games, obviously it was better last year. But even a guy like Sam Hartman, who was also less athletic than CJ Carr, they still had minus 126 that year. And Sam Hartman still was plus 123. Like, I could see that for CJ, like plus 123, 2 touchdowns, 2, 3, 4 touchdowns. I don't see minus. But if they do get to the minus, there's a big problem. Big problem. Means the O-line stinks really bad. Really bad. Or CJ Carr has no pocket presence whatsoever. And I don't think either one of those things is true.
Yeah. And odds are if you're taking that many sacks, you're not going to be healthy for a 14, 15, 16 game season to make a deep playoff run anyways.
Nope.
Buy, sell, hold. Riley Leonard, Tyler Buckner, and Ian Book all have mobility in common. However, none of them were true dual-threat college quarterbacks, though the potential was there, and it still is for Leonard in the NFL if he continues to develop.
I strongly disagree that Riley Leonard wasn't a dual-threat quarterback. If Riley Leonard's not a dual-threat quarterback, I don't know what a dual-threat quarterback is. And same thing with Tyler Buckner. Ian Book's was not a dual threat quarterback. Ian Book was a pocket quarterback who could scramble. I wouldn't call him a dual threat quarterback. He was very athletic and he could run, but he was not a guy you were like doing a lot of designed run plays for. He could scramble. I don't think that's what I count as a dual threat. Buckner and Leonard absolutely, without a doubt, are like prototype dual threat quarterbacks. I mean, I honestly don't know. Like, to me, Ball Peen asks what's the definition of a dual threat quarterback? A dual threat quarterback is, to me, is a guy that is a legitimate playmaker and factor and focal point of the offense as both a passer and runner. And so when I think of a dual threat quarterback, I think of a guy that can like, he's part of your run game.
Yeah.
Like where he is, and not like an every now and then on third and short. I mean, he is a part of your run game. I like buddy of mine were talking earlier about Clemson, Deshaun Watson and Trevor Lawrence. I thought Deshaun Watson was a dual threat quarterback, not just because he rushed for 1,000 yards one year, but like he scrambled a lot, but he also was a focal point of the run game. He was a key part of the run game. Trevor was not. Trevor was a scrambler. Trevor was more like Joe Burrow. And now they would occasionally have some designed runs for him in certain situations, but it wasn't like they were building the offense around his ability to run. So that's what it is to me. And any quarterback that is a focal point of the run game is that to me. So, yeah. And like you could say, like certain. I mean, is CJ Carr a threat? Because what he said is, to me, is the guy an actual threat in both the run and pass game? Well, if that's your definition, then I don't know why you don't count Riley Leonard and Tyler Buckner. Are you trying to say that they're not threats in the passing game? I would strongly disagree with that. They're not Joe Burrow, but they're definitely threats in the passing game. They're certainly focal points of the run game. Like CJ Carr could be used in the run game. There could be plays called for him in the run game. It doesn't make him a dual threat quarterback. He's a chain mover. So to me, you're a factor in both areas. You are a focal point of both areas, running and throwing. Not as a scrambler. That just makes you an athletic quarterback.
Yeah.
Dual threat quarterback to me is you are a part of the run game.
Yeah, I wouldn't put Ian Book in this list either. I would have put in like Brandon Wimbush or Deshaun Kaiser before I put in Ian Book.
Well, he's saying that none of them were dual threat quarterbacks. So Ian Book should be on this list because I don't.
Oh, I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm gonna disagree with that because I think those first two guys are absolutely dual threat quarterbacks.
Mm-hmm. Buy, sell, hold from Ball Peen Shillelagh. Between great versus good weight and mobility, if you had to choose one, weight is more valuable on the offensive line than mobility.
Buy that for some teams, sell that for others. It just depends on the scheme, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you're a team that really likes to run a lot of outside zone and a lot of movement type of stuff, I don't care as much about beef. You got to be able to move. If that was my big frustration with Notre Dame in 2023 is you're trying to run a bunch of pin and pull with 300+ pound guys who don't really run that well. That didn't make any sense to me. And you're going to leave Billy Schrouth on the bench and Ashton Craig on the bench, who are the kind of athletes that can execute this type of game plan. Didn't make any sense to me. So it just depends on your scheme. If you're a power football team, you're running counter power, ISO. Mobility. You don't want a guy that can't get out of a stance, but I need big, physical, nasty pluggers, maulers. So it just depends on what your scheme is. Just depends on what you do. I think for Notre Dame, they prefer a combination of it, but I think Notre Dame could get away with guys who aren't super mobile in the run game. But I think with what Mike Denbrock likes to do with the throwing game, as we saw last year, they care a little bit more about mobility and athleticism than they do just girth. So I think Notre Dame would be one where I don't think that weight was more valuable than mobility, because why else would they have picked Anthony Knapp over Tosh Baker?
Mm.
Anthony's the better athlete. He's more mobile. He's, those type of things as opposed to being the bigger guy. I mean, Tosh has like 30 pounds on Anthony Knapp. Rocco's a lot bigger than Sam Pendleton was, but they felt Sam was more mobile. I think that was a mistake to go with Sam over Rocco, but it was about that. So And then between, but again, it just depends on the system. Depends on the system. Somebody just said girth is overrated. Again, it depends on the offense. Like Alabama's offense back in 29 to 2013, they needed girth. You couldn't do the things they did schematically if you had a bunch of 285, 290-pound guys. You couldn't do what they did schematically if you had 5 Robert Haineses across the board. You'd have to be different, and so I disagree with that.
Buy, sell, hold between great versus good weight and mobility. Weight is more valuable on the defensive line than mobility.
Same thing. I mean, it depends. Are we running Georgia's scheme with Jordan Davis? Then girth, weight, power. Alabama's defense with Terrence Cody. Weight was more valuable. Weight, power, strength, all things that come with being a big guy was all more important than mobility at that position. That wasn't necessarily true on the edge. It just depends on what scheme you're running. The way that Notre Dame plays, that's a sell. The way that Georgia plays, that's kind of a buy. No, the thing about Georgia is they want both. But they'll take Alabama under Saban would have taken a Terrence Cody over a Howard Cross any day of the week. I mean, that's just reality. That's what they needed. That's what their system was built around. So a lot of that just depends on your system. For Notre Dame, I'm going to sell both of these. In theory, you could find systems where this is true for both.
It's a good point. Yeah, I'm with you. Buy, sell, hold from Joe Allen, 72. Both Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price will have more total yards this season compared to last.
Oh, that's definitely a buy on that one, Joe. Part of that is, even if Notre Dame only gets to the quarterfinals, I could see this being true. Honestly, I think that Jeremiah is going to rush more and catch more this year. I think Jadarian will as well. Goes back to kind of that first question. I think they're going to take a lot of the yards. Riley Leonard had over 900 yards rushing last year. Even if Kenny Minchie's the starter, I think there's probably 400 yards there that you're going to need to distribute somewhere else if you play the same amount of time. I don't think that they're going to do that. I think you're going to maybe see 200, 300, 400 yards at the most from the quarterback position this year. And then depending on who starts, that number goes down a little bit. I don't really want to see CJ Carr running a whole bunch. I don't want him taking that pounding if he's a starting quarterback. And I don't want 207-pound Kenny Minchie taking that kind of pounding either as a first-year starter. Be smart about when you use him in those areas. Let him scramble a little bit, but I'm not calling a lot of design runs for him. He's not my short yardage back the way that Riley was last year at all. So I think those are going to go a lot to these two guys, and you could see some go to like Keedron Young as well, but I think these two guys are going to be the primary beneficiaries of that. And they'll both have more production. Even if they only play 14 games, I think they'll rush for more than they did last year. Or more total yards than they did last year. And pass game is going to be part of that as well. So, yeah, I like that, Joe. I buy that. I certainly buy that.
Buy, sell, hold. The offense will be the foundation of the team this year.
I'm gonna sell that. I think the offense is going to be better. I think that the offense has a chance to be this. Would I be shocked if this happened? No, not really. I still think this team is going to be competing for a championship because they play big-time defense. I still think that's the heart and soul, the foundation of this team. I still believe that. Just part of it's because of talent. Part of it's because that's who they're established. Part of it's because their head coach is a former defensive coordinator, middle linebacker. And then part of that too is I need to see the offense become that first. Right? Like I'm with Trev. I'm show me that you can be that kind of offense first. I think the offense is going to be much improved. And that's why I like this football team. But if you were to tell me the offense is the foundation of this team, one of two things is going to be true, Trev. They had a very disappointing defensive season and the season ends early, or Notre Dame not only goes 16-0, but they look like Ohio State looked in the post playoffs. They look like that all year. If you tell me that the offense is the foundation of this team, but the defense doesn't take a step back. You're talking about, honestly, I'm not even being hyperbolic about this. You're going to look at that team. If Notre Dame this season does not take a step back on defense, but the foundation of their team, which means the best part of their team is the offense, you're going to be talking about this being one of the best teams of the last 30, 40 years. Not for Notre Dame, in college football. Because if their defense is as good as it's been the last 2 years, and it's not even the best part of their team, oh my goodness. Like last year, Ohio State's offense did a lot better in the postseason than it had. They looked great, but their defense was still the foundation of their team, even in the playoffs. So yeah, oh my goodness. Like, man, I hope this is true. As long as it's true because the offense is that good. You don't want it to be true because the defense takes a big step back. Because then you're basically like you're the same team. You're winning in a different way. Like seriously, Trev, if the defense is as good as it's been the last 2 years, but it's not as good as the offense, like how good is this team? I'm asking. How good is am I overstating this? Like this is a dominant, like they don't play a lot of close games even in the postseason type of team.
I don't think it's overstated. I think the issue that I have personally is just like I've always been a show me person, So like that hypothetical sounds awesome. I think you're right. Like if the defense doesn't take a step back and the offense is the focal point and the main talking point of this team, then yeah, on paper this is the best team in 30 to 40 years.
Just so we're clear, I sold it. I said I'm with you. I got to see it. I'm simply saying if this submission is true,
yeah,
like I kind of spoke for you. We're selling this for the reason you said. I got to see it.
Yep.
And you got to be really freaking good to be better than this defense, unless the defense takes a step back.
Mm-hmm.
I just am trying to think about how good this team would be if the defense stays as good as it was and the offense is the foundation. I mean, I'm being serious, Trev, because like you look at the defense last year and you look at where Notre Dame was in scoring defense, you look at where they were in total defense. I mean, they finished with the number 4 scoring defense in the country. They finished with number 11 total defense in the country. I mean, number 11 in total yards per play. I mean, and that was partly because of the postseason. They were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7th, 8th, 9th amongst Power 5 teams. You look at their numbers in defensive efficiency. I think they're in the top 2. They were, according to one of them, they were ahead of Ohio State until the title game, I believe, in defensive efficiency. No, in the FEI, Notre Dame still finished ahead of Ohio State in defensive efficiency. If their offense ranks higher than that, they're scoring 45, 47 points a game. That's where LSU was in 2019.
Mm.
But LSU's defense gave up over 20 points a game that year. So, yeah. I'm selling it, but I just kind of got excited thinking about what that would look like if this was a buy, but not a buy because the defense took a step back. Holy mackerel, that'd be fun to watch.
Oh, yeah. The team would be an absolute wagon. I mean, ugh.
Yeah. We did get a buy, or we got a super chat, Trev, so I wanted to bring that up here real quick.
Yep, super chat from Bobby, Jesus follower Reeves. Thank you so much for the super chat, Bobby. Appreciate you. Buy, sell, hold. Everett Golson was one of the biggest disappointments at Notre Dame in our era. The championship run in 2012 to not playing in 2013 and going 6-0 in 2014 before going 1-5 and then transferring to Florida State.
I'll sell that. I mean, look, I understand where you're coming from, Bobby. And by the way, Bobby sent me a DM. He got his IB gear. So he bought some IB gear in the merch store. Appreciate you, Bobby. I mean, look, he still had the championship run. He still had the year in 2014 where he led them to the start that they had and played great against Florida State and all that. And I get all that. The 1-5 at the end of the year was not all Everett Golson's fault. Like, he played poorly against Arizona State. There's no doubt about that. But, I mean, there were some other games where Everett played pretty well and the rest of the team was terrible. I'm not putting that stuff on him. Like, I'm not putting the Northwestern game on Everett Golson. I'm not putting the Louisville game on Everett Golson. I'm not putting the Florida State game on Everett Golson. Like, they didn't lose those. I'm not putting the USC game on Everett Golson because their offense the offensive line was terrible and the defense was absolute trash. So I'm not putting those games on him. He had 4 touchdowns and 287 passing yards and 78 rushing yards against Northwestern. They lost 43-40 in overtime. You know why they lost that game? Because the freaking head football coach, after scoring to go up 11, decided to go for 2 instead of taking the extra point, which meant if they failed, Northwestern could kick a field goal, get a touchdown, and 2-point conversion, a tie, instead of forcing Northwestern to score 2 touchdowns because he was a very overrated coach who choked in big moments. That's just a fact. So that's not on Everett. So, yeah, that season was a disappointment, and Everett gets blamed for it because he's the quarterback. The 2013 season is what does him in because of the choices he made to not be here. But he still did all these things, which is still better than what, some of the other top quarterbacks that they signed did in their careers. He still accomplished more than Dane Christ accomplished, for example. And I'm not blaming Dane. I think Dane got snowed over by being coached for 2 years by one of the worst Division I football coaches I've ever seen in I've met Division III GAs that were better football coaches than Charlie Molnar, and I am not joking. He was terrible. And that's who coached Dane Christ's last 2 years. Awful coach. But still, Everett was better than what Dane was. And Dane was ranked a lot higher. I mean, Dane Christ was a 5-star player. Keep in mind, I am not bashing Dane Christ. I love Dane Christ. I thought he got totally snowed over during his during his Notre Dame career. But I still say, take out the context of why his career was still more disappointing than what Everett Golson's was. So, and there was other guys that didn't even start never played at Notre Dame. I think the biggest disappointment of our era is Tyler Buckner. And again, it's not his fault. I mean, injuries and all that, but for what my expectations were for Tyler Buckner to what he ended up producing, started 3 games at Notre Dame. I thought he was going to be a really big-time player. Injuries played a role. A whole lot of different things played a role, but he just never was the quarterback I thought he was going to be. Everett at least had the 2012 season. That's still more than what a lot of other quarterbacks had. Certainly. And that's just quarterback. I'm not even getting to other positions where guys flamed out.
Yep.
Like Deion Walker. Remember Deion Walker? How good he was supposed to be?
Yep, sure.
Never did anything at Notre Dame.
Yep. Buys a hold from Joe Allen, 72. The wide receiver room will have at least one 1,000-yard receiver and 2 800 or more yard receivers this season.
I'm going to sell that. Man, I hope that you're right, Joe, because it's going to be a really fun year if this is an accurate number. I'm going to sell that just because of what Trev and I always say. And I think I'm speaking for both of us here, Trev. We've said this a bunch. We've been asked some version of this question several times. I just think the ball gets spread around a lot more. I think Malachi, and I think that you're going to see like if this number was true, I say, okay, so Malachi and Jalen Greathouse are one of the 1,000 or 800. And then the third is either Eli Raridan, which wouldn't, Jordan Faison, Will Pauling, somebody. But I just think those numbers are just going to get spread around between not only those 3 guys, but also Will Pauling, also Jordan Faison, also some of the younger receivers are going to little emerge. But then also the running backs are going to get a lot of that production. So, I mean, that's 2,600 yards passing just between 2-3 guys. Like, I just don't think they're going to be that kind of team. Now, could there be a time in the next couple of years where this happens? Yeah, could. I just don't think that's who this offense is going to be this year. Like, if CJ Carr is a third-year starter or Kenny Minchie's a third-year starter, could I see something like this happening? Yeah, I could. I definitely could. Not in 2025.
Yeah, I love where the thought process is with all these submissions. We've been getting them a lot this offseason. And to a degree, rightfully so, because we all agree that Notre Dame's offense is going to be better. But look, there is a finite amount of yards to be gained this season offensively for Notre Dame. And all of these scenarios can't be true. And I'm saying that because I don't want anybody to leave this point like, it was a letdown season for the offense because they didn't have 2 1,000-yard rushers and a quarterback that rushed for 500 yards and 2 1,000-yard receivers and 3 800-yard receivers, and their defense didn't hold everybody to 3 points.
They do that LSU. I mean, you do have now the LSU 19 team and the Miami 2001 defense as one team. Absolutely.
Literally. And so if I were to pick one to be true, I still say that the 2 1,000-yard rushers is more likely than an 1,000-yard receiver and 2 800-yard receivers. I've said this before in shows. Go back and look what the USC receiving core did last season, and I think those numbers are going to start looking more translatable to what Notre Dame's receiving room could be. I mean, USC had like an 800-yard receiver, 2 600-yard receivers, a 500-yard receiver. Like, it's going to be a lot of distribution of yardage this year for the offense, and it's all going to look awesome. But that's where I'm at with it.
The other thing too, Trev, is I think we're going to see with this, looking at the schedule, there's going to be a lot of games where they're not going to throw the ball a whole lot in the second half. When they do, they're not throwing it to those three guys. It's going to be to, hey, did you see that catch that, Cam Williams or Elijah Burris had from Blake Hebert in the fourth quarter of that game? That was a heck of a throw, or that throw they had, that 50-yard touchdown from Kenny Minchie to, third string running back or backup tight end, or, like we saw against Purdue. There's going to be some of that too.
BISO hold the scheduling of the quarterfinals, semifinals, and the championship games for the 25 and 26 playoffs was poorly planned once again. Having the championship game on a Monday night is idiotic.
Yeah, bye. Yeah, I mean, I left this one on there because I did want to kind of respond to it in a different way. I do think it's very poorly planned. I think that the schedule is a little jacked up. I would actually – I don't know the right way to fix it. Part of me wants to – I still say that they're not willing to do it, but I still wish that they could get rid of the championship games, because if you could get rid of the championship games, then you could have a schedule that kind of, you're kind of playing things to where you're almost playing the semifinals on New Year's Eve or on New Year's. I have to look at the calendar to kind of see how that would track, but I think you could do something like that. This whole, you have, like, the way it works, you have more time in between the first round and the quarterfinals than you do between the quarterfinals and the semifinals.
Yeah.
It's like, and then there's more time. It's just, none of it makes any sense. It's dumb. And yes, I agree that having the championship game on Monday night is idiotic. And I felt that way for a long time. Because it's been that way since they started the 14 playoff, correct?
Yeah, I mean, for whatever reason, I remember Notre Dame playing in the national championship game in 2012 on a Monday.
Was it? But I think that was, let me see.
I remember the college football national championship being on Mondays for a very long time.
Yeah,
it could be better.
7th,
2013.
Yeah. So I have to go back and look at the calendar, but they've definitely been doing it since the playoffs started. But it could be the BCS. I'd have to go back and look at that, but really dumb. Really, really dumb.
BISO hold from Aiden Benami. Notre Dame's offense will be just fine if Fields has less than 400 yards receiving.
Sell. If he has less than 400 yards receiving, that's probably because of something bad happened. Like, he got hurt. And look, that's one position that I feel Notre Dame is in a position where you can't lose a guy, that boundary receiver. I don't know that they have someone else that is in his league. Could Micah Gilbert eventually get there, like 2026 or 2027? Maybe. But guys, I mean, just go back and look. And I actually did this the other day, Trev, because I wanted to be like, did we actually hype up Malachi Fields before that game? And I went back and looked at our Virginia preview, and we absolutely did. So I just think he's a difference maker. And if he has less than 400 yards, that's going to hurt the offense. I absolutely really hurt the offense.
Yeah, because either he got hurt or there's something systematically wrong with the offense, which either one is bad. Because Malachi Fields, to your point, Brian, is as advertised. That you don't do what you did with Anthony Calandri at quarterback, averaging like 6.8 yards per attempt. And you don't go for 50 catches for over 800 yards and 5 touchdowns because you suck. But
if not really very many good weapons to protect him.
Yeah. So that means he either got – yep.
2 years ago, him and Washington were a dynamic 1-2 punch, but not last year.
Yes. But if Malachi Fields comes in and has less production than what Bo Collins had last year, that he either got hurt or something is systematically wrong with Notre Dame's offense, and both is not good.
Yeah, neither's good. Neither's a good answer. Because to your point, that's less production than what Jaden Greathouse, Bo Collins, and Mitchell Evans all had last year.
Mm-hmm.
It's not good.
Buy, sell, hold for the most part, give or take a few positions. Notre Dame starters are pretty much already set. Yes, starting doesn't matter as much these days, even though we'd all want to start.
A few positions. So quarterback is not set. The safety opposite Adon Schuler's not set. Will linebacker's not set. I don't think that either of the D tackles are necessarily set because Iden was very clear, starters. He wanted to actually focus on starters, not the thing where we say like it doesn't matter. So I'm respecting the question and giving an answer. So if we're looking at it from your standpoint of who on paper is the first snap, take your snap type of guy, I mean, that's 5 right there. I don't know that it's a given right now that the 5 starting offensive lineman is determined just yet because of some injuries. But even if you count that, that's still 5. Are we going to assume that the Z receiver position is already set? I don't think so. Between Will Pauling and Jordan Faison, I don't think that's definitively set so far. That's 6. So, I mean, that's at least 6 positions. And do we think is the Viper position set right now? I don't think it is. That's 7. And I don't know that it's definitively decided who's going to be the quote unquote starter at the end position either between Josh Burnham and Bryce Young. I don't think that's definitively settled. And I can see it changing from week to week. So if you're focusing on like who starts, who's the first on the field, then I give or take, I mean, that's 8 out of 22 positions that I'd say right now. And I didn't even count one of the O-line positions at this point in time. So no, I don't think that's set. I think there's a lot more open. A lot more open. And when you have the kind of talent Notre Dame has, even if there's not right now a perceived position battle, doesn't mean there won't be one in the fall. We've seen that.
Agreed. Buy, sell, hold. If we had a big hole or need on the defensive line and David Stone was still in the portal, you'd go after him and pay him.
Sell. I'd want to go after somebody that actually has played a lot and proven something in college. Now, has David Stone a highly ranked guy? Sure. Played like 90 snaps last year. I'd want someone more proven and established if there was a big hole need. So,
yep.
Like Oklahoma had an okay defense last year, but you couldn't crack the starting lineup on that defense, but you're going to come to Notre Dame and be like this big needle mover. Not right away, maybe eventually, but not right away. So, well, you got a thought on that? You know David, big freshman 5-star D tackle guy. Yeah.
Yep. I mean, to me, Notre Dame already got their kind of project guy in the portal, and that's Elijah Hughes. I mean, if you're going to go and add a relatively inexperienced player, what is David Stone going to come in and beat out Jason Onye and Gabe Rubio and Jared Dawson? And that's where Marcus Freeman's comments of maybe the talent could improve the program, but what would it do to the room? I think that's David Stone. I would file under that conversation. So, and again, I understand some of the arguments that people have. Well, think about what it could be after 2025. It's like, right, but 2025 hasn't happened yet, And so, like, let's focus on this season. So that's where I'm at. Elijah Hughes, yes, he has multiple years of eligibility, but they brought him in to also contribute this season. Right. It wasn't, all right, man, we're going to let you sit and you're going to blow up in 2026.
Yeah.
So,
and I'm not paying a guy to come in and just be a rotation guy right now.
No.
And again, that's the only reason he jumped in the portal was to get paid. Oklahoma ended up paying him more, and he stayed at Oklahoma.
Mm-hmm. Buy, sell, hold. Notre Dame starting quarterback will have over 10 interceptions.
I'll sell that. Over more than 10? So.
I'm gonna sell it too. The number being 10 is interesting. Both quarterbacks make good decisions, but they're still young. I expect them to play a longer season.
I'm also anticipating CJ Carr starting. That's just my premise. If Kenny starts, he'll throw more interceptions than that. But he'll also make that's the reason you're starting Kenny. You're going to live with some of those turnover mistakes.
Yeah.
Because you're going to get some playmaking.
Yeah.
I don't see – I mean, it's 15 – even in a 15, 16-game season, because I also don't think you're going to see him turn the ball over a ton early. And I think that's because I don't think they're going to put him in a whole lot of those situations where he's going to do that a whole lot. So I'll say, because I mean, gosh, it's been a minute since Notre Dame has had a quarterback throw for over. Riley was at 8 last year. Hartman was at 8, and Hartman had some bad picks in 2023, and he still was only at 8. Even the team had 9. You had Pine and Buckner; those two combined for 11, and they had some bad picks. Jack Cohn had 7. Ian Book had 3. Ian Book had 6. Ian Book had 7. I mean, that year he had 7. Wimbush had 6. Even that year, they only combined for 13. They had combined for 10 in 2017, 9 in 2016. So I think Deshaun Kaiser had 10 in 2015 as the starter. And he made some, his 2 picks against Temple and 2 of his picks against Boston College were just absolutely dumb plays. Just dumb plays. And I don't see CJ and Kenny. They're both smarter than Sean was. So I don't see that. I think 10 is a fair number. Now, if they're coming out here throwing the ball 35, 40 times a game, then they'll probably go over that. I just don't see that.
Fair. Buy, sell, hold from the ghost of George O'Leary.
Love that name, by the way. It's a great name.
Notre Dame linebacker play would benefit more with Jaden Osbury hitting his ceiling this year than Jalen Sneed hitting his ceiling.
I buy that. I think Jaden Osbury is the better all-around player. I think Jalen Sneed is never going to be a guy that has the instincts of a Jaden Osbury. He's more explosive athletically, but I think Jaden's a little bit of a better all-around player than Jalen Sneed. It's close, though. I'll put it like this. I'm buying that, but if Jalen Sneed's the guy that hits the ceiling this year, he's still really good.
Yeah.
But I just am of the belief that so is Jaden Osbury, so is Kingston, so is Madden Faremo, so is Bodie Cahoon, so is Preston Zinner. So, yeah, I'll buy that.
Yep.
I'll buy that.
Buy, sell, hold. Tennessee improved more by adding Joey Aguilar than UCLA did by getting Nico.
I buy that. We had asked this yesterday, Trev, but I buy that. I absolutely buy that. I'm just not a big Nico fan. I'm not. I keep hearing this, he didn't have a team around him. Did you watch the same thing I watched? Because I watched them have a pretty good freaking running game last year that was begging to get some help from the pass game. You know, you had Dante Thornton, you had Squirrel. It's not like you had a bunch of bums over there playing receiver for you last year. That was more of cover for Nico than anything. Now, did Tennessee have Jalen Hyatt and Cedric Tillman type of receivers like they had under Hendon Hooker? No, they didn't. But Brew McCoy's a good football player. Dante Thornton's a good football player. Squirrel White's a good football player. And everybody in the media kept telling us how big of a pickup Chris Brazell was, getting him out of Tulane. Had 44 catches for 711 yards the year before. You know, everybody kept telling me how good he was, and then he comes in and he doesn't do anything. He was 6'5", 210 pounds, and I'm supposed to believe that this is all. You didn't have any receivers? I'll put you like this. I mean, no disrespect to Notre Dame's receivers. But if Notre Dame had Tennessee's receivers last year, they'd have been better throwing the football. So I don't want to hear Nico didn't have anybody around him. Shut your pie hole. Could the offensive line have been better? Certainly. Some of the stuff was on Nico. Hey, how about you set the protection correctly? You know, so I think a lot of people took blame for Nico's struggles last season. And everybody still, once a kid gets to college, stop talking about what he was in high school. I don't care what he was in high school. It's about what are you doing for me now? And as I said yesterday, Nico Aava, best chance of saying it, I'm trying to be respectful to him by getting his name correct, has started 14 games in college, and he has thrown under 200 yards in 9 of those games. You can miss me with all the Nico is this great talent that was held back by the Tennessee offense. Go look at his numbers compared to every other quarterback Josh Heupel's ever had. And you're telling me this is by far the worst supporting cast give me a break. Give me a break. Michael, you can buy into the hype all you want. I know football, and I'm telling you, Nico was the problem, not the receivers. So you can miss me with all that nonsense. Were they great? As I said, no. They weren't as good as the Cedric Tillman, all that group. But you're telling me that they were that? Give me a break. Come on. The year before in 2023 with freaking Joe Milton at quarterback, Squirrel White had 67 catches for 803 yards. You know, like Brew McCoy 2 years ago before he got hurt with Hendon Hooker had 52 catches for 667 yards with Hendon Hooker and Joe Milton at quarterback. And now all these guys, all of a sudden, miraculously, as they got older, got worse. Or maybe they didn't have a very good quarterback to play with. So you can miss me with all that. And no leadership. I mean, when you hear reports that the Tennessee players told the coach, we don't want him back, okay, that said everything to me. So has Nico got a stronger arm than Joey Aguilar? Sure. Okay, fine. Let's bring Joe Milton back because he could throw the ball 100 yards. Doesn't make you a quarterback. I think Tennessee made out on this deal. And I think it's so odd. I mean, it's your decision, but I think it's going to come back to haunt Deshaun Foster big time. Big time that he's hitching his wagon to that family.
Yeah.
Nico this year and then his brother next year. His brother, who committed to you, decommitted right before signing day to take a payday at Arkansas. You're bringing him back for Nico? Are you serious? No. Hard pass.
Yeah,
so I buy this.
We talked about this yesterday. I'm going to hold this, and it's not because of Nico. It's because of Joey Aguilar. I think he's a good quarterback, but I think going from Appalachian State to the SEC is going to be an interesting dynamic. I'm not saying that he can't. I mean, it's different when you go from a season where you played Liberty and South Alabama and East Carolina and Georgia State to Georgia, Arkansas, Alabama, at Florida. I mean, I improved, I think, in the terms of like team camaraderie, things like that. I think they improved, like what Brian was talking about, but I don't know if they improved like overall record, maybe. And I know not all that has to do with the quarterback.
I think they improve at quarterback. That's where I look at it. They're improved at quarterback.
Well, and that's where I'm holding because like I'm not on the Nico hype train like some people are either. But again, I also can't confidently say that a quarterback from Appalachian State is going to then go and be better in the SEC. Like
I get that. I totally get that. What I'm saying is he just needs to be better than Nico. He doesn't need to repeat what he did at Appalachian State. He just needs to be better than Nico. I mean, 2 years ago at App State, he threw for, let me pull up these numbers real quick. 2 years ago, he passed for 3,700 yards and 33 touchdowns. I don't think he's going to repeat that because he played Gardner-Webb, East Carolina, Wyoming, Louisiana Monroe, Coastal Carolina, right? Totally fair. But you're asking him to go to a system where all he needs to do is over a 14-game season, go for over 200 yards 10 times instead of 9 times. You know, like that's not going to be that hard, in my opinion. I am very unconvinced that in a 13-game season that Joey Aguilar is not going to pass for more than 19 touchdowns. I'm very unconvinced by that just because I have watched the film. And Trev, there's always, I think your point is valid about the going from the group of 5 to the FBS. We saw that with Notre Dame last year where a guy like Chris Mitchell has a 1,000-yard receiving year, FIU, comes to Notre Dame, and he's not able to get away with some of those things. Although I think we both agree he would have been better in an assistant. Like he came to Notre Dame at the wrong year.
Yeah.
If he would have come to Notre Dame this year, I'd be even more excited about it. Hindsight 2020 going back, I'd say that. So I think you always have to be careful that you take a group of 5 guy. But my thing with Joey Aguilar is when you pop in the film, there's tools there that translate very well. And this isn't a kid that's like never played anybody good. You know, I mean, we talk, he played North Carolina, threw for 275 yards a couple years ago, passed for a couple touchdowns, rushed for 42 yards. You know, he's played some teams that have been ranked. You know, James Madison's a really good football team 2 years ago under Kurt Cignetti. The D coordinator there is the guy that Indiana he passed for 318 yards and 3 touchdowns in that game. So, I mean, he's not exactly like coming from the MAC or coming from the FCS level. You know, like where I'd maybe be a little bit concerned because we've seen this. We've seen some of these kids come from like the FCS level and like Cam Ward. It took Cam Ward a year to transition from the FCS level to Washington State. But that's a much bigger jump to me than going from the Sun Belt basically. I think it's Sun Belt, right? Not Conference USA. Isn't App State
I think so.
in the
Yes.
Sun Belt now? Conference USA, Sun Belt. Let me see. Dang it. See, now this is going to bother me, Trev. Let me go here. College football standings. Where is App State? So Conference USA. Okay, that's Jacksonville State. So yes, they're Sun Belt. Wasn't Marshall used to be in Conference USA? Now they're in the Sun Belt. That's what always gets me when I look at these Sun Belt teams. I see Marshall, and I'm like, hold on a second. Marshall's, I thought, in Conference USA, but they're in the Sun Belt now. So that's I just feel like it's not as big of a jump than it is going from maybe some other places. The other thing too is he's also going to have a much better supporting cast, than he had as well. But at the end of the day, it's just I don't think Nico is very good. That's really what it comes down to for me. If he's an above average quarterback at Tennessee, that's an upgrade. That's how I look at it. So I'm just not a big Nico fan. And I was that way, as you know, Trev, before all this happened.
Yeah. I'm with you. That's why I held it. Because I can't confidently say on paper, he should be. I agree that he should be able to pass for more than 200 yards in 9 of the 14 games.
In 13 games, he passed for 2,600 yards. Yeah. 7.8 yards per attempt.
Yep.
19 touchdowns, 5 picks. I'll just be shocked if he doesn't perform better than that.
Yep.
Shocked. But you know what I love about it though, Trev? You're consistent. You're consistent that sure. In theory, I just need to see it. I think what that does is that prevents you from making a bunch of wild predictions and assumptions, and then everybody can go back and be like, see, you said, look, this is where I see it. This is what the kid's talent is, but I just need to see it translate from this level to that level. And that's totally fair. Totally fair. I'm only saying I look because of my feelings of Nico specifically as a player. I think the bar is pretty low.
Sure.
It's not to be true.
Sure. Yeah.
I
get that.
I also think Joey Aguilar is coming in with a greater sense of mission and purpose. I don't think it's a coincidence that within 24 hours of Nico committing to UCLA, Joey Aguilar committing to Tennessee. I don't think that's a coincidence at all. That kid is coming in motivated to prove people wrong. So yes, that is going to be very interesting. Because I tweeted man, I would love it if this kid came to Tennessee.
I saw that.
And then an hour later, and I wasn't making that up. I'd seen other people mention that, and I was like, oh man, that'd be awesome. That's where my tweet came from. And then an hour or two later, it's Joey Aguilar's going to Tennessee. They're going to get a better quarterback for $1 million less. This has been a good offseason for Tennessee.
Yep. I mean, you can make USC in comparison to what Tennessee was paying him. UCLA got a quarterback for millions of less dollars.
That's also true. Also true. Yep.
Oh man.
Oh my God. Yep.
Buy so hold from Isaiah Lehman. Notre Dame should be worried if Anthony Knapp is the left tackle.
No, I mean, Notre Dame should be worried if Anthony Knapp is the left tackle and he hasn't progressed at all in his second year as a starter. Look, there's two things I'm not going to do. I'm not going to jump into the camp of if he's left tackle, you're screwed, because it's just not accurate. I mean, that assumes that a kid who started 15 games at Notre Dame gets 0% better at all in year two. That's nonsense. Every kid that played for Joe Rudolph in 2023 was better in 2024. Every single one. So why would Anthony Knapp not fit into that category? Now, the question is, I'm also not going to jump into the Anthony Knapp is now going to be awesome category. He's got to get a lot better in pass pro than he did last year, and you're not going to have Riley Leonard there to bail him out. So he needs to get better. And if he doesn't get better, that's a problem. So my argument is not so much that Anthony Knapp sucks, and if he starts at left tackle, they're screwed. It's more of if he doesn't get significantly better, there are better options that he's not putting there. That's my beef. But I'm not going to be shocked if Anthony Knapp does what every other freshman left tackle or offensive starting tackle at Notre Dame, Robert Hainsey, Joe Alt, Blake Fisher. I mean, every single one got better in his second year. Why would significantly so? Why would Anthony Knapp not get better? But that also doesn't justify just plugging him in there and not letting there be any competition at that position. So both of those takes to me are wrong. The whole trust Joe Rudolph no matter what thing annoys me because there's evidence not to trust him with starting decisions. Yep. But I also get tired of because you think so-and-so should be there, that now we're going to pretend like Anthony Knapp is absolute garbage. He's not. He's not this stud that the apologists want to pretend. He's a freshman All-American. Okay, he still can't pass block. But let's also not act like Anthony Knapp in September was the same thing that we saw in October, November. He did get better. Still wasn't very good at it, but he was better. We're going to believe that his growth is just going to stop after his freshman year? The question is how much better.
Yeah.
That's the question. And that's going to determine how successful this thing is at the end of the day. And if he doesn't perform, they better have somebody ready.
Yep.
But I'm hoping he gets better.
Well, to your point, Brian, you can say that about multiple players, not just about Anthony Knapp. I would be concerned if a lot of players were just at the same level that they were at in 2024 as they were in 2025.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just Anthony Knapp specific, but I get it. I mean, left tackle at Notre Dame, it's a high octane position, gets a lot of attention, but worried just if he starts there, no, I would be concerned if he doesn't progress. And we've seen no evidence that he's not going to progress because he did progress as the season went on. So, yep. By so hold, Notre Dame will finish in the top 5 in the 2026 recruiting rankings.
In my rankings, possible bye. They got to finish. They're only at 11 right now. They got to finish pretty strong. Mm-hmm. In the national rankings, I'm sell that. I did a rivals and a 247 sort of class prediction type of thing. And unless some guys get major bumps, the numbers they're going to be at keep them around 6 to 7 most years. That's where they're at. And neither one of those outlets have any history of bumping guys once they've committed. If anything, they either stagnate or they drop. That's just how it goes. So, in my rankings, sure. But in the national rankings, no. I mean, you're going to see it. You're going to see guys that are committed now that are going to just keep – Tyler Merrill's just going to keep steadily dropping down the rankings. And all of a sudden, you know what I mean? You're just – what's the incentive for them to regrade Noah Grubbs? None whatsoever, because he's been committed, for almost a year. So no, I'm gonna sell that. I'm gonna sell that.
Buy, sell, hold. A true freshman will start on offense by mid-season.
I'm gonna hope sell that one because that means most likely it's because of injury. Tight end injury, receiver injuries. That would be, if we're talking, because I love that Isaiah said true freshman, because others were like, hey, I'm going to have one at quarterback, maybe, it would be like last year, Trev. It'd be because of injuries. So Notre Dame is in a position now as a program that there's just not going to be a whole lot of freshmen coming in starting right away.
Yeah.
Like even Jadon Blair, as talented as he is I heard some things about his spring that were like, okay, he's everything we thought he was. And he's still probably not going to start because you've got Luke Talich and Jalen Stroman. And you still got really good players there. Now, might he start by the middle of the year? Possibly. And that's at a position where it's very wide open. There's a lot of other talented true freshmen coming in who aren't going to start. That's just where Notre Dame is as a program. You got to be a dude. Bryce Young, as good as he was last year, didn't come in and start as a true freshman. Kingston, as good as he was last year, didn't start as a true freshman.
Yeah.
The only true freshman that started last year that I can think of were Anthony Knapp and Leonard Moore. And they both stepped in because of injuries.
Yep.
So that's just kind of where they are as a program.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to hope sell that one because I don't want there to be an injury that causes that.
Agreed. Buy, sell, hold. If Notre Dame doesn't win a title in the next 5 years, Freeman is out.
I'm selling this because I'm taking your Freeman is out conversation as like they move on from him. And I sell the heck out of that. They let Brian Kelly hang around for 11 years. And he had more 5-loss seasons. Or actually had as many seasons with 5 or more losses, I believe, as he had with 10 or more. So they lost 5 or more in 10, 11, 16.
13, right?
13, they only had, 4 loss seasons. They basically had as many, right? So his first 10 years, they went Lost 5, lost 5, lost 1, lost 4, lost 5, lost 3, lost 8. So in his first 7 years, they had 2 5-loss seasons. No, 3 5-loss seasons, right? Because 2014, I keep forgetting about 2014. They had 3 5-loss seasons, a 4-loss season, and an 8-loss season in his first 7 years, and Notre Dame didn't fire him. Marcus Freeman's not going anywhere unless he wants out. Now, if he chooses to leave, so like if you're saying, Isaiah, that like maybe if they don't win in the next 5 years, he leaves, maybe, but I don't know what the reason for that would be. So I'm going to sell that. I'll be a little disappointed, but I'm going to sell that. Because if they don't win a title, it doesn't mean that they're going to be going 8-5 every year like they did under Brian Kelly.
Yeah, winning back-to-back major bowls within a week of each other, I mean, kind of gave Freeman not a permanent resident card, but I mean, in a year with all those injuries, playing for a national championship, going 3-1 in the postseason, bringing home some of the wins that he did, that bought him a lot of time to where even because it just says doesn't win a title. If Notre Dame is a consistent playoff team in the next 5 years and makes a run, not makes it to the playoff, gets bounced in the first round in the next 5 years every single year, maybe. But I mean, if he's making any sort of a playoff run every year in the next 5 years, but doesn't win the title, I think he is safe and sound in South Bend until he decides to leave. So, buy, sell, hold. If Brian Kelly stayed, Notre Dame would have at least one playoff win.
Sell? That guy couldn't even get to the playoffs with a Heisman Trophy winner and 2 top 20 draft picks, a receiver who both balled out as rookies in the NFL. Still couldn't even get to a playoff game. No, they don't. No. Because they lose 2 games this past year if Brian Kelly's still their head football coach. They lose to A&M, and they would have figured out another game to lose. They'd have lost to somebody. So sell.
That's fair. I didn't think of it in that context. Yeah.
You're thinking like they'd have beat Indiana? Is that how you're?
Yes. Yeah.
I don't even know if that's true. Like Brian Kelly in that type of environment couldn't even get his team up to play Cincinnati in 2021.
Yeah,
but fair. Yeah, I mean, maybe they beat Indiana, maybe. But I don't know that they have the roster that they had last year if Brian Kelly's still their head coach.
Yeah, that's facts.
Like we're assuming the roster is the exact same with Brian Kelly, that the coaching staff is exactly the same with Brian Kelly. The regular season goes right. Like I don't think any of those things have been true. Now, if I look at it from your standpoint, Trev, of everything else is the same, and then he might have beat Indiana. I could go with you on that. Perhaps it would have been a closer game, and then they get smacked by Georgia the next week.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, I was looking at it from the lens of like you just insert Brian Kelly as the head coach on December 20th. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So fair enough. Yeah. In that light, then I sell it because I don't think they make it to the playoffs. So that amount of injuries, dude, Brian Kelly would play that card every single week.
And he would have not had a team that had the depth to overcome that the way that they would have needed to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. USMA 87 said Kelly would have lost to Louisville. That's probably the other team that they would have lost to. That's a good one. They'd have lost at A&M, and they probably would have lost at home to Louisville.
And at USC.
Possibly.
Honestly, the way that game was going.
Possibly.
Yeah.
Again, because he wouldn't have had the roster that Marcus Freeman has put together. He would not have recruited the way that Marcus Freeman did. How do I know that? Because I know what he did leading up to the time Marcus Freeman arrived, and it wouldn't have been good enough.
Yeah. Buy, sell, hold from Riker Ferg. Tennessee will lose to UCLA in a bowl game this year.
I'm selling that. Selling that. No, Tennessee would beat UCLA in a bowl game.
Yeah. Yeah. Agreed. And that's also under the assumption that UCLA is bowl eligible this year.
That's a great point, Trevor. That's a great point. Yes. Great point.
The Aava brothers.
This is how bad I feel. So first of all, people in the chat, some person in the chat trying to act like my reactions about this quarterback thing about Nico have to do with what he did this offseason. Spare me with that. Stop projecting your emotions onto me. I have been consistent about Nico for years about what I think about his ability. You fall in love with the big arm just like people fell in love with Joe Milton. I've been telling you about the issues he's had for years. for years. So you can miss me with all that, separate the field and all. No, you can't separate off the field and on the field for a quarterback. That's the whole point. But second of all, that has nothing to do with it because my stance on Nico has not changed since he was in high school. So you can miss me with all that. And then you're going to give him a far less talented team around him? Whoo. Whoo, whoo, whoo. Man. Mm-mm. And that, but how much I do dislike the family. I'm not going to lie to you. I do. And I would like that. How my feeling towards them is that I would actually root for Tennessee in that game. That's how bad I feel about them off the field. I'm not going to hide that, but I've been saying this for years about him as a player. My opinion of him has not changed one bit as a player. And
fair enough.
Is any of this surprising? Guys, this is no different than what went into his decision to go to Tennessee in the first place. This ain't new.
Right. Yeah. Buy, so hold. The Aava brothers are 1-year rentals for UCLA.
It's possible. I mean, I'm going to sell that because unless UCLA just says take a hike, I don't know that there's going to be much of a. I mean, why are they at UCLA now? Because nobody else wanted Nico except group of 5 schools. I mean, Fresno would have taken him. Tulane might have taken him, but Tulane backed out. So now we're good. I mean, he didn't really have a whole lot of other options. I don't know where they think they're going to go if UCLA doesn't work out. So, and they're back closer to home. I think that'll help. So no, I'll sell that. I'll sell that for multiple reasons.
Fair enough. Buy, sell, hold from Black Irish 864. Losing 2 running backs to the portal will only strengthen the room.
I love where your head's at, Christopher, on this one, but I'm going to have to sell it because I have to be consistent. And if Notre Dame were to lose 2 backs, whoever those 2 backs are, I don't know of anybody in the room that's really an attitude problem, not a work ethic problem where it's like addition by subtraction. I don't know of anybody in the room where that's the case. So I don't think you're benefiting in like, okay, I'm just glad they got that bad attitude out of the room. I've not heard that about any of the running backs as far as work ethic and try hard and that type of thing. And I said, like, look, yeah, are they going to be okay at running back if they lose 2 guys? Depending on who those 2 guys are. I mean, if they lose Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price, I'd be like, no, they're not going to strengthen. That doesn't strengthen the room, But if it's depending on who it is, I think they're going to be fine. But I don't think it strengthens the room. I would still say you're better off with the 4 that with all 6 than you will be with all 4. With 4, I've always said that, Chris. I've always been, hey, listen, yeah, you're going to be okay with that guy leaving. Like Notre Dame's fine at quarterback with Steve Angeli leaving. Would they be better at quarterback if Steve Angeli said, hey, I'm good being the 3rd string quarterback and I'll do whatever the team needs? Yeah, of course they'd be better with a guy like that in the room. Doesn't mean that they're not going to be just fine. You're always better when you've got more good players. If those good players are bought in. So assuming everybody was as bought in as they are now, then I think I'd still rather have the 6 than whatever 4 stay. But that doesn't mean that I think they regress. Right? It's like where I'm kind of struggling to why I'm selling is I don't think it makes them even better. I'd have to believe that whoever those 2 guys are leaving makes them better. And I just don't see that. I think they're going to be as good as they were last year, no matter what. So that's where I'm at.
Yeah, I agree. When I hear the word strengthen, I think of like, it galvanizes a room. Like there's like a locker room cancer or like a position room cancer. I just don't get that impression from this group. I don't think there is a skill drop off, especially if, like J Love and JD Price, if that stays intact, this room is still going to be just as good. But I can't confidently say that if they lose 2 of the very talented players, whoever it is that we've been boasting about all offseason, about like, man, look at how deep this room. If they lose 2 of those facets, I can't confidently say, oh, this room's better.
Because sometimes, Christopher, I think that they're even losing a talented player. Like when Rico Flores left, I was like, that's addition by subtraction because Rico was not always a happy camper and there were some issues in the room. And it's like sometimes it's like it's good to get I don't know that there's anybody like that running. I have not heard anything about that at all from any of those guys. And so, yeah, I don't see that being the case. I think the question is, if you were to say losing 2 running backs to the portal does not diminish the running back room, I'd say, okay, yeah, I buy that this year. And next year, depending on who you lose, you may lose 2 of those guys, plus then you lose Love and Price next year. Now you're like, okay, now we're a little thin. We got to fill up here real quick. Yeah.
Buy, sell, hold from Teach Like a Champion. At some point, Marcus Freeman will publicly address the issues, real or perceived, with USC and Chad Bowden.
Sell, because Marcus Freeman has way more class than the other side of this conversation. And he'll only say things most likely that are, look, we love what he did. We're thankful for what he did, blah, 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 blah. We're worried about what we have right now. That's probably the most he would ever say. Like, now, his pre-Indiana press conferences let me know that there's a little something there with Marcus Freeman, but I think in a game like that, Marcus Freeman would rather let the players do the talking than him. Like, I think I think he would know, I've got the significantly better team. I'm not going to do anything to give that team motivation to come out and do something. I'm going to say the right things, and then I'll say what I need to say during the handshakes after the game. After we just, beat them by 40. That's what I think. He's too classy for that, in my opinion. So I'll sell that. I would like for him to say something. I'd like for him to take some shots, but that's because I'm a little bit hot-headed and like to talk trash, and that's why I'm not one of the million reasons I'm not the head football coach at Notre Dame. That right there. But yeah, I'm going to sell that. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think the only way he publicly addresses it is by just kind of showing the scoreboard after October 18th. That'll kind of be his publicly addressing it.
Like Pete Weber in the chat said, Trevor, he asked, Brian, do you think that he keeps the foot on the gas in October? And I think, to your point, that's how he addresses it. Like, okay, we're up 41-10. We're putting the backup offense in the game, but Kenny's dropping back and bombing it. Like, we're still trying to score every time we touch the football. We're still blitzing. We're going to try to beat you by 50, 60 if we can. Yeah. That's how he addresses it. And that, for the most part, that's kind of been his MO, with the exception of the Kurt Signetti little jabs. I looked them up on the internet. Yeah. Like, that was great.
Yeah, that was in the most Marcus Freeman way too.
Because I didn't catch it at first. I was like, oh, okay. That's an odd thing for him to say, but whatever.
Oh.
I didn't catch it at first. And I was like, wait a second. Wait a minute. Hold on a second. Like, that was kind of savage. But like when James Franklin was like trying to little brother Marcus Freeman at the press conference, he didn't say anything about it publicly. He was classy and all that. Now, he said something about it in the locker room, which players have later said, yeah, he was pissed about that. Like, we don't know what was said at the press conference, but Coach came back mad. Mm-hmm. He's got a little bit of that to him. You could tell a little bit with the Georgia stuff, like there was a little something to him. Like I've said, Marcus Freeman's a better coach when he's pissed off. Like,
oh yeah, man. I mean, there's some people that forget that he's an all Big Ten linebacker.
Middle linebacker,
like,
right.
You wouldn't say that to him if the pads were on.
No, because he's always smiling and he's very intelligent and he's just got that real nice, like, if you ever meet Marcus Freeman in person, like, and I've talked to people that have met him, and it's like just not in a formal setting, but just like very nice, personable, polite, just a really good guy. But as I've said a million times, he's still a former starting middle linebacker under Jim Tressel. He's got some edge to him. And that's what I've said. He coaches better when he's that guy. Not the nice, calm, personable guy, which he is off the field. But when you get out, and he was trying to be that guy early in his tenure as head coach. That's what he's trying to be. I said, look, if that's who you are, then that's fine. But now you see him coach, and he's just like, dude, I'm going to be myself. And I'm going to be intense. I'm going to be talking. I'm going to be all over the field. I'm going to be, and he's a very different guy in that regard. But that's all, like Manti Te'o. Meet Manti Te'o was like nice, polite, smile. But I would not want to meet him in an Oklahoma drill. I can assure you of that, because he's going to punish me and then tell me about it. But some guys are just that way. Some guys are just always like on. They're just kind of jerks all the time, or or they're intense. Some guys are not that way. Some guys are super polite. Like, you ever see Peyton Manning, like, on all these funny commercials and the SNL, like, funny guy? That's not how he was as a player at all, how he was as a player. And it's not fake. It's like, it's just when the pads are on, some people just, man, as soon as that helmet goes on, just like something snaps in their head and they're just a different guy. And that's kind of Marcus Freeman, but he's always allowed that to do his talking, not getting into the sparring match in public, which I'm fine with. Like, there's only ever been one coach that did that where I'm like, I liked it. And that's when Bobby Bowden and Steve Spurrier went back at each other. Because it was fun. It never seemed personal. It was always kind of like fun. It was always kind of like they're playing into the rivalry. I get it. It was never, and then you could tell when they interacted, there was a respect there. They were having fun with it. Like, now it's like, like, I still forget James. I think I texted you, Trev, after that press conference, and I was like, we might even talk about it in the show. I was like, yeah, Marcus Freeman looked pissed.
Yeah.
Like, James Franklin tried to little brother him, and Freeman was not having it.
Oh, no, man. I mean, he was talking about his age and like his hairline and how good he looked. And it's like, dude, this is weird.
Mm-hmm.
This is weird behavior. Go win a Big Ten championship. Dude. What? Oh, my goodness.
Love it.
Buy, sell, hold from Teach Like a Champion. Losing 2 running backs, if it happens, and they are not Jeremiah Love or Jadarian Price, will hurt the running back room, as both Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price have a legitimate chance to enter the draft after this season.
See, now this I can buy, because I think this question is looking forward. And so you're going to move into 2026 with only 2 of the current 6 if 2 guys that aren't them leave.
Mm-hmm.
That's problematic, because you may have 4 talented running backs in 2026, but 2 of them are going to be freshmen.
Yeah.
So down the road, I buy that.
Yep.
For 2025, it's not going to be a problem, as long as it's not one of those 2 guys.
Yep, I'm with you. Buy, sell, hold. CJ Carr being named a starting quarterback gives Notre Dame a better chance to hold on to both Carr and Minchie.
I'm going to sell that. I don't think that they're going to be able to hold on to either one of these guys in 2026. I think they hold on to both of them in 2025. I don't think they hold on to both of them in 2026. So I think if I had to guess, he's coming from the standpoint of, well, you can find a role for Kenny Minchie and he'll stay. No, they're both going to be gone after 20. Whoever doesn't win the starting job, I almost said they're both going to be gone. Either of them would be gone. Whoever loses the job is going to be gone.
Yep. Because both players are just too talented to be either a role player or not starting. I mean, that's just reality, man.
They're both too talented to be that.
Yep. Buy, sell, hold. Notre Dame's chances of securing a 2026 running back class of Bonner and Osborne.
Well, hold. I mean, it's possible. There's several other I could see between those 2, plus you have DeZephan Walker, you have Jonas Walton. Between those 4 guys, I could see some combination of 2 of those guys, any of those 2 guys in the class. So I'll hold. I need to see some things play out first.
Yeah.
But it's possible. It's possible.
Buy, sell, hold. Notre Dame is more likely to secure a commitment from Kadon Finley than Elijah Golden.
Buy. I mean, they could get both of them, but I'm more comfortable with where they are right now with Caden Finley than I am Elijah Golden. So I'll buy that.
Buy, sell, hold from J.G. Whitetown. The requirements of 105 players will help and hurt teams over the next couple of years, equaling the balance of power.
And so I don't really look at it like that. I mean, there's going to be something to that, but most of the guys getting cut off 105 team rosters aren't going somewhere else to do a whole lot. Like, if you take the bottom 10 for Georgia and put them on Vanderbilt's not beating Georgia because of those 10. Just not the way that I see it. I look at it more of all the hundreds of kids that you're basically screwing over. Well, they get to go play somewhere else, but they didn't want to play somewhere else. They wanted to play at that school. I mean, look, if Notre Dame cuts 11 kids off their roster from right now, let's say nobody jumps in the portal. by my count, Notre Dame's at 116. If they got to get down to 105, they got to cut 11 players from the roster. Will those kids find homes to some degree? Yeah, but they're being forced to go somewhere else that they didn't want to go to. They wanted to play at Notre Dame. That's the problem. Is you are depriving them of an opportunity to play at the school that they wanted to play at, and that's why I think the not grandfathering thing is so stupid.
Yeah,
because it's not like, okay, by 2028 you got to be down to 105. Then that's fine. You're not screwing anybody over because you're only recruiting to 105. That's the reality. Now that's also stupid because who gets to 105 and loses? No one. No one transfers. Nobody quits. Nobody gets hurt. It's dumb. But when you're making them cut players, you're absolutely depriving them of an opportunity to play where they wanted to play. It's disgusting to me. Absolutely disgusting. And of all the lawsuits, and I've said this yesterday, I'm not going to go on the rant again, there's been so many that I think are stupid and useless. And I'm like, of all the things going on in our country, that's what your attorney general in your state's worried about? Is that you don't want the NCAA looking at Nico's contract? You know what? Maybe you should have let the NCAA look at that contract, because then maybe you would have been able to get out of this stupid situation 2 years ago and found a quarterback that actually gave a crap about your institution beyond what you're paying them.
Yeah.
That's what you're wasting your time on? Not homeless people, not opioid epidemic, none of these things. You're trying to pass laws to say college football players don't have to pay taxes? Really? How about the single mom working 3 jobs to take care of her family? How about we worry about doing things to take care of her, not making sure that these college football players don't have to pay taxes on the millions of dollars they're making? Like, this whole thing is stupid. And now we're just going to do this. We're just going to tell these kids, like, sorry, we know you wanted to go to Notre Dame and you were willing to pay $70,000 a year to play at Notre Dame, but you got to go. That's stupid. This is one of the few things that should be fought in court. You should be suing against them. I hope that there's lawsuits. This is the one that I would fully support. And I said it yesterday. I would fully support this one. 100%. Because what you're doing to those young men is unfair. It's completely unfair. They wanted to play here. Some of these kids are willing to pay their own dollars to come here. And they're being deprived of that opportunity. Why? Because you don't want to have to pay more than 105 players, part of a revenue share that you should have paid them 20 years ago, but you were too greedy and stupid to do that, and now we're here. So, okay, mini rant, but mini rant is over. What say you, Trev?
I mean, you and I see it the same. I mean, it's tough when somebody makes a commitment to go to a school, and the old saying, like, control the controllables, and it's something that's out of their control that's not fair, and it's all for financial gain, which I hate. That somebody has to suffer because of it. So you and I see that the same, man.
Yeah.
Buy, sell, hold. This year's schedule could end up being a soft schedule, having only 3 to 4 teams with above 500 winning percentages.
I'm going to sell that. I don't think this year's schedule, to me, I think on paper is a good schedule. It's a challenging schedule, but it is one where I think a couple teams could maybe bottom out. But I think Miami has above 500 record, because what was the submission? Let me look at it again. Only 3 to 4 teams above 500. Okay, so I think Miami's above 500. I think A&M's above 500. I think Boise's above 500. I think that USC's above 500. I think Navy's above 500. I think Syracuse still goes above 500. That's 6 right there. And I could see BC being above 500. I could see Arkansas being above 500. I could see NC State being above 500. What I think you could say about the schedule is what makes the schedule, what knocks the schedule is there could be 0 top 25 teams in it by the end of the year. It surprised me a little because I think A&M is going to be a top 25 team this year. I think Navy's going to be a 10-plus win team this year and be in the top 25. I could see some not top 25 teams, but I don't think it's going to be that bad where only 3 or 4 teams are above 500. That I don't see. But we could end up looking at it as being a soft schedule because there's just a bunch of 9-3, 8-4, 7-5 teams. I could buy that as possible, but not to that degree. That's a little too far for me.
Yeah, I mean, even last year's schedule, Notre Dame didn't have a gauntlet of a schedule. I think this year's schedule is even tougher. than what last year's is. As of right now, who knows how the season plays out. Notre Dame only played 4 opponents last year in their 12 regular season games that were under 500.
Yeah, and they were way under.
Yeah, and they were really bad. Purdue,
Stanford,
Florida State,
State,
Stanford, and Virginia.
Yeah. And they were
Mm-hmm.
USC was at 500, but then went ahead of it in the bowl game. So, yeah, agree.
Buy, sell, hold. Notre Dame will have 4 games this season where there will be 2 100-yard rushers and receivers.
There's games where they'll have 200-yard rushers and 200-yard receivers in the same game? 4 of them? No, I sell that. That's some big-time production. I'm going to sell that.
Yeah.
I think there could be games this year where you have – like if you were to say there's going to be 4 games this year where you're going to have a 100-yard passer or receiver and a 100-yard rusher, I'd say, okay, I'd buy that. Maybe a couple more, maybe. But 2 and 2 and 4 games, I'll sell that.
Yeah.
Hope I'm wrong.
Me too. Yeah. I'm selling it. I hope I'm wrong, but it goes back to, and I won't rehash it, but it goes back to what I said earlier. There is a finite amount of yards to be gained over the course of the season and in a game. And as much as I think that all of these players on their roster on offense could do that, that's a lot. I hope I'm wrong. I really do. But man, that's a tall ask.
And when we say hope we're wrong, it's not that we think something negative. It's just like those are crazy numbers. Like those are insane numbers. I mean, insane numbers. So basically what you're going to have is you're going to have the 2009 receiving core where Floyd and Tate are going over 100 together, like multiple times. But you're also going to have, I can't even think of a Notre Dame backfield where that happened very often. Like as good as this year's running back room was, I think there was only one, there wasn't a single game where they both rushed for 100 yards, was there? Here, let me look at Jadarian's game-by-game statistics. Give me a second here.
I mean, the only ones that I can think of is one of the backs, along with Riley Leonard, had to be over 100 yards each against Purdue.
Well, you had 2. You had Riley and Jadarian, so you could go with that one. I mean, Riley and Jeremiah, so that is one. Thinking about him. Miami
of Ohio, Riley Leonard rushed for like $143.
Jeremiah only had 60 in that game. So let me see here. And then Riley rushing didn't have another 100-yard game the rest of the year. The closest they came was USC. And then Jadarian only had one 100-yard game all year. That was against USC in a game where Jeremiah had 99. So he only had 2 games all year last year where you had 2 guys over 100. So Purdue, and that game you almost got to 3 guys over 100 yards rushing because Jadarian had 86 on 8 carries.
Yeah.
But you didn't have anybody over 100 receiving in that game. So you'd have to basically have the best version last year plus some running wise, and then the 09 receiving production with those 2 guys. I just don't see that.
Yeah. No.
But it'd be a lot of fun if they did.
Yeah.
A whole lot of fun.
Yeah. Buy, sell, hold from Ramble On. Every position group has at least one All-American candidate by the end of the season, even if they don't actually win.
Okay, so I'm gonna sell that because I don't think either of the quarterbacks are going to be All-American caliber players this year. Outside of that, I mean, it's possible other than quarterback. I could see obviously a running back. I would not be shocked if one of Malachi Fields or Jaden Greathouse is like in the conversation to be one of first, second, and third team All-American. I could see that. I could see Eli Raridan battling for All-American honors. I certainly could see multiple offensive linemen battling for All-American honors. I could see, defensive line would probably be my next least likely, but I could see, between Boubacar, Bryce Young, one of the D tackles, I could see a defensive lineman at least being in the conversation for it. They've had a defensive line All-American each of the last 2 years. And then linebacker, certainly, and then secondary, certainly. So quarterback is what makes me hesitant because I just don't see one of them being – and it's just one of those positions, Trev, where there's only one guy. So first, second, and third team All-Americans, there's only one guy. That's true at tight end as well, but tight end's a position where you don't have as many tight ends producing like you have quarterbacks producing. So I'll sell that, but it's not completely out of question. And I think going into 2026, this might I might have a different answer going into 2026.
Yep, I'm with you. Buy, so hold. Notre Dame will have 2 players in contention for the Heisman. Top 8 to 10-ish in voting at least.
I'm going to sell it, but it's not out of the question. Like, if Notre Dame is as good as I think they're going to be, I could see a second Notre Dame player being 10th. Because like, let's say Jeremiah Love's in the top 10. I could see a CJ Carr being 10th because, I mean, Ian Book was 9th in 2020 and he passed for like 15 touchdowns. You know what I mean? Like, it was a COVID year. I get it, but still it's like he had no business being in the top 10. Even with the COVID year, had no business being in the top 10. But he's the starting quarterback for an undefeated Notre Dame team. Look, for all the stuff about Notre Dame bias and all this other kind of stuff, and there certainly is Notre Dame bias in some areas. I mean, again, Ian Book finished 40th in college football in 2020 in touchdown passes. And also that year, Ian Book finished, 12th in total passing yards that season. And he finished 34th in yards per game. And he rushed for, it was like 485 yards, 24 total touchdowns. And he finished 9th in Heisman Trophy voting that year. I could see a Leonard Moore having a monster season, or a Don Schuler or Drake, somebody like that having a crazy season, probably unlikely on defense, but like maybe a D lineman. But I could certainly see a second Notre Dame player potentially being in there. So I'm going to sell it. But if this team is undefeated in the regular season, I don't think it's out of the question that their quarterback could finish 10th. Let me look at last year's Heisman Trophy voting, Trev. I want to see something real quick. 2024 Heisman Trophy voting. Let me pull this up here real quick. So the guy that finished 10th last year was Kyle McCord, and he had 9 total votes. Would it shock me if Notre Dame's quarterback, if they go undefeated, had 9 votes? No. The year before that, J.J. McCarthy was 10th with 21. I could see Notre Dame's quarterback putting up J.J. McCarthy caliber numbers next year. Certainly could. And it would be like that year where Corum was 9th and J.J. was 10th. It'd be something like that. So I could see that. Now, if next year is like 2022 and Drake May finishes 10th with 4,300 yards and 38 touchdowns, and Bijan Robinson's 9th and Michael Penix is 8th with 4,600 yards, where it was just a crazy year of production, then sure, that won't be it. But I don't know that we're going to see that next year. I don't know if we'll have the talent to see that next year. So I'm going to sell it, but I don't think it's completely out of the realm of possibility if Notre Dame's undefeated to have that.
Yeah. I sell it as well. I get where you're coming from for the undefeated seasons, but it's hard for me to picture a world where a Notre Dame quarterback doesn't make an All-American team, but is finishing in the top 10.
Oh, that happens all the time. I mean, because you'll have years where there's 5-6 quarterbacks there, and there's years where guys don't sniff All-American teams, but you get some sports writer that that vote them because they it's again. How did Ian Book didn't sniff All-American status in 2020? But he was 9th. You know what I mean? It's just like that tainted me a little bit, Trevor, when I saw when you see that, because you're just like, okay, like if he can finish 9th in Heisman Trophy voting,
yeah,
when he passed for 15 touchdowns, it's like, okay, all right, things are a little bit different.
Yeah,
things are a little bit different. But he was the 6th quarterback in the voting. Because if you're 10th in Heisman Trophy voting as a quarterback, you're 6th or 7th at quarterback, most likely in voting. But yeah, but that kind of backs up my point about All-American, though, Trev. Because if you're the 6th or 7th best quarterback in the country, and you're quarterback of a team that's undefeated, you're going to get some Heisman Trophy votes. But the 6th or 7th best quarterback's not sniffing an All-American team because you only have 3.
True. Yeah, that's true.
I hope we have to have this conversation in December. That'd be a lot of fun.
Me too. I would just like to have a conversation where one Notre Dame player is in the conversation.
Wasn't Ian Book
10.
the last one that finished in the top 10?
Yeah.
Because Josh Adams in 17, even then, I don't think he was. Yeah, he didn't finish in the top 10. So you had Ian Book in 2020, and then before that, you'd have to go back to Manti in 2012, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah, when he finished second. Yeah.
Yes.
That's a good point. I'm getting greedy, Trev. I'm going from none to 2.
I would like, look, man, I love the optimism. I do. But my optimism is 1.
Yeah.
Like,
I'm with you.
Yeah.
I feel like next year, if Notre Dame's undefeated, they would have 1.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like if Riley Leonard would have played in September like he played in October, November, he finishes in the top 10. Because they don't lose in Northern Illinois, they're undefeated, and you don't have that stigma where he's got to overcome that stigma of how bad he played against Northern Illinois all year. He'd have finished in the top 10. But, yeah, that's going to be interesting. So Syracuse's quarterback next year going to finish in the top 10, Trev?
Plead the 5th. Come on, man.
Sorry, I just had to do it. I had to do it, man.
Oh, that's so good.
Trev's like, why do you hate me, Brian? I don't understand what I did to you. I've always been kind to you. I don't know. I work hard. I don't know what your problem is.
I was going to say, I answer that question. It's going to get clipped, and I'm going to get tagged in a bunch of stuff on Twitter.
No doubt.
Oh, man. Biso Hold from Domerdale 44. Born in 1997. What's good? The best 3 Notre Dame teams I've been alive for, 2004, 2012, and 2015.
First of all, I'm just sad that this kid was born, and I believe this is the year you were born as well, correct?
Mm-hmm.
That was the year I graduated high school. So it just makes me feel a little old whenever I hear that. But I still love you, Domerdale. Don't worry about it. Born in 1997, the best team since you've been alive. So I think the 05 team was better than 2015. I think the 05 Brady Quinn team that took USC down to the wire, I think that team was better than 15. They both had 3 losses. You could argue the 2015 team had better losses in that their 3 losses were all the top 5 teams. But I just think overall that was a better team in 05. I think you could also make a strong case, and I would make this case, that 2018 was definitely better than 2015. Like, it's 24 for sure for me, 2018 for sure. Then I'm debating 12 versus 05. 15's not in there because that was a disappointing season to me. They beat nobody that year. Nobody. You got to beat somebody for me to consider great talented team, very talented team, but not the best team. That team was very disappointing.
Yeah, I also, having been born in 97, Domerdale, I got to sell this. I know, man.
Just kneeling me, Trev.
I mean, if it no, that won't make you feel better. I'm not going to say it. Never mind. But
okay, go ahead and say it.
I was going to say, if it makes you feel better, I'll be 28 this year. But
shut up.
I know. That's why I said it's not going to make it better. Never mind. But I'm going to sell this. The top teams that I've been alive for, if I had to narrow it down to 3, I'd go 24, 18, and 5. Honestly, like that would kind of be my 3, and honestly, maybe in that order. I'm not sure.
I'd go. You said 24 first,
yeah,
18 second.
Yeah.
The reason I'd go 12 is because they had between the two, they had fewer losses than the 05 team.
Sure.
But they also had the bigger wins. Like beating Michigan on the road that year, Michigan was 3rd. Michigan ended up not being that great that year. But the 2012 team, you know what separates it for me, Trev? Obviously, the pushback would be, yeah, but they got annihilated by Alabama, and that 05 team never got whooped. Like even the Ohio State game, it was a 1-touchdown, it was a 1-score game in the 4th quarter. I mean, you know, like Zibikowski's fumble recovery ties the game in the 4th quarter. Far more competitive than Alabama. But they had that bad loss to Michigan State that the 2012 team never had. And their best success of the season was a great loss to USC. where at least the 2012 team had that big win over Oklahoma, who's a good team, really good team that year. They're both kind of flawed team. I don't put 2020 in there. The win over Clemson doesn't mean a whole lot to me. It was a good win, but it wasn't like the number one team in the country because they didn't have their star quarterback. They didn't have three of their best defensive players. You still needed overtime to beat a team who had a true freshman starting a quarterback, who had his best game of his life against you. And you got a rematch against that team a month later, and they were healthy, and they beat the crap out of you. So, and the rest of that schedule was terrible. You only had one other decent team on the schedule. That was North Carolina. That was a really good win, beating North Carolina, but the rest of your schedule was terrible. And then obviously got just manhandled by Alabama in the playoffs. So 2020 is not in there for me. But yeah, 24, 18, probably go 12. But I'd still put 05 over 15 though. I would. Now you want to talk about talented teams? 15's in the conversation for number one. But that wasn't a great team. That was a very talented team, but their coaching screwed them over that year because your head football coach said, hey, let's do another round of Brian Van Gorder. It went so great this year in year one. Let's do that again. Let's get another coach let's give this coach who gave up 40 points to a garbage Northwestern team. Let's let him come back and see what he could do in year two. That sounds great. Great. Pass.
Yeah, 2012 is always a weird year for me to look back on because
Bama taints it, doesn't it?
Okay, so honestly, and hear me out on this, to a degree, yes, that season was magical. It was also lucky. Like Notre Dame should have lost to Pitt. I was at that game. Like Sierra Wood fumbles on your own doorstep in overtime, and then Pitt's kicker misses like a 20-yard field goal.
Where they missed that you had two guys on the field with the same number?
Yeah, like that. Come on. Like I look at that season with a lot of fond memories because, they go undefeated. They're 12-0, and that was after years of just kind of okay seasons. You know what I mean? But 2012 was like, yo. But then you go back and look, and it's like, okay, they beat Michigan, and they had the lays for Manti Te'o's family. That was great. Michigan finished 8-5.
Right.
That year, they went on the road against Michigan State, the Big Ten. It's
who at
Michigan
the time
State
was top 10, but they ended up being unranked at the end.
They ended up 7-6.
Yep.
It was an ugly win over BYU at home
with their backup quarterback.
Agreed, but their backup quarterback who started multiple years before 2012. He started in 2010 and 2011.
They only had 1 year where he was the full. Well, he never had a year where he started the whole season, but 2011 he started all but one game.
So I have fond memories of that, but I think some people, not saying that you're doing this, but I know of people who talk about the 2012 season like every single game was like the Oklahoma game.
There was no here's where I think that the Oklahoma wasn't even the best team they beat, though. The 05 team has nothing that can compare to beating Stanford that year. Stanford finished 7th in the country in the polls.
True. Yeah, no, true.
So you had two big wins like that. And you could talk about they got lucky, but they didn't lose to a Michigan State. I mean, that Michigan State team that 05 lost to wasn't a very good Michigan State team either.
Very true.
Lost home in overtime. So I get your point. This is a crazy take, Trevor, and I really want to hear what you think of this, and I want to hear what the chat thinks of this.
Yeah.
I think the best thing that could have happened to how we remember that team is if they would have lost to Pitt. Because I think that team, if they lost to Pitt, would have won out, gone to a bowl game, and smacked somebody in a bowl game. Yeah. And we'd be looking back at this 12-1 season, magical season, that didn't end the way that it ended. And we'd be talking about, man, what if they just would have been able to not fumble that ball in the end zone against Pitt? What could have been? And we'd be talking about, we could have hung with Bama that year. We could have hung with Bama that year. There'd be no saying that.
We
might be saying that because we don't know. They'd have gone to the bowl
right.
game, beat somebody, been 12-1. They would have not. I think that team would have probably ended the New Year's Six streak because there weren't a lot of great teams that year. I think they could have won a New Year's Six bowl game that year. I think we'd look back on that 2012 team and feel a whole lot better about that season than we do now because they really played one great team that year and they annihilated them. You didn't look like you belonged on the field that day. That's an interesting one. Very interesting one.
That is. Now, the ever-changing variable is how would have Brian Kelly coached if he got to the New Year's Six Bowl?
The reason I think they would have won it that year is because you think about it was one of those years where there just weren't a lot of great teams outside of Bama.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, Oregon wasn't that great that year. They were a highly ranked team. K-State was the other team. Like, they'd have beat K-State that year in a New Year's Six Bowl game. Let's say they'd have played K-State in the Fiesta Bowl or something like that. They'd have beat them. It's just one of those years where they wouldn't have played a team that would have whooped them the way that they would have. They wouldn't have played the SEC champ. They wouldn't have played in the Sugar Bowl against whoever the other SEC team would have been that would have whooped them.
Yeah.
So,
that's true.
somebody just chatting. Ohio State couldn't go to a bowl game that year. Remember, Ohio State was undefeated and they couldn't go to a bowl game that year. So they wouldn't have had to play that Ohio State team with Braxton Miller. So that's why I think that season would have we'd look at it very differently.
Agreed.
You know, if they would have lost to Pitt, I think that actually was the worst thing to happen to that team, was beating Pitt because of what it led to.
Yeah.
You know, so it's interesting. Very interesting. But, yeah. So I'm going to go 24, 18, and 12. 05 is probably my favorite year of all those prior to until this year. 05 was my favorite team. Like, that was probably one of my most enjoyable seasons of being a Notre Dame fan.
Honestly, yeah.
Fun to watch.
Honestly.
Really fun to watch.
Mm-hmm.
I like that one. You young bucks coming up with some good ones.
We have our moments.
Your generation may not be lost after all, Trey.
Well, I don't know about that cell, but but look, man, we have our moments. We have our moments.
Yeah.
Buy, sell, hold from Carve It Up. Which of the following decommits if they were willing to join this team? So I'm assuming buy one, sell one, hold one.
Yes, sir.
Keon Keeley, Deuce Knight, Peyton Bowen.
I'd buy Keon Keeley because I'm always looking for talented defensive linemen.
Yep.
I would hold on Peyton Bowen because it's a position of greater need and see how he can compete. And let's be honest about something. If we're talking about coming out of high school, you might put Peyton Bowen number one, because could you imagine Peyton Bowen being coached by Mike Mickens? Like, that'd be a little different. And then I'm selling Deuce Knight, and it's not because of any negativity towards Deuce Knight. It's just more about he's not playing this year. And I think if you had Deuce Knight, you might have been forced to find a way to get him on the field because he's of how talented of a runner he is. And I don't know that would have been ideal. So I'm actually going to buy Keon, hold Peyton, sell Deuce. And a lot of it just comes down to need.
Yeah.
And positional value for me combined with need.
I'm in the exact same boat. Buy, sell, hold from DMND13. After Javian Osborne commits to Notre Dame, the clown up north will still continue his lying immaturity and unprofessionalism about the recruitment, even though Gregory Patrick's father just put him on blast after Patrick also chose Notre Dame over Michigan.
I'll buy that because that's who he is. So he's not going to change his stripes because there's no motivation for him to change. Because what happened when his dad put him on blast and people went back and looked at his articles, clicked on this, clicked on that, and that's exactly what he wants. So, like, he doesn't care about people hating on him. He likes that. Like so I say, you guys want to shut him up? You want to hurt him? Stop clicking on his article. Stop engaging with him. Stop talking about him. Because that's what he wants. He does not care that you all think he's an idiot. He doesn't care because he's getting paid. On3 loves that. They don't care that he's unprofessional, a liar, and immature and all those things because he drives clicks because people hate him, so they click on his articles. That's a win for him. He cares a whole lot more about that. You angry clicking on his tweet is for him is the same as a happy click on his tweet or his articles. It's what he wants. So ignore him. That's what I do.
Yep. It's like that famous quote is by some like author, I think, but it's like all publicity is good publicity. That's the thing.
All attention's good attention to some people, and that's exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Give me a second. Come on now. There we go. Whew.
Buy so hold from DMND13. On 3 will not drop Gregory Patrick in their rankings after Patrick's dad also called out on 3, saying they're going to drop him now after he committed to Notre Dame.
I don't think they're going to drop him. And when I mean drop, I don't mean he was 93rd and he finishes 98th. That's not a drop to me. That's more about 5 guys went ahead. So like when everybody says, oh, all these guys got dropped. Well, if all 7 of my guys, if my rankings stay exactly the same, but I take one guy from number 250 and put him up to number 5, and all the Notre Dame guys were ranked below well, then technically they all dropped. That's not a bias towards your team because it's also true as everyone else who's below 5. It's more so when you see these consistent big drops, 15, 10, 15, 20 spots, things like that, and it's just across the board. Say whatever you want about On 3, but they have been higher on Notre Dame's top offensive lineman than anybody in recent years. I mean, they had Gerby Lambert as a 5-star. They were the only ones that had Jagasaw as a 5-star other than us. They had Anthony Knapp as a top 200 player last year. They had Styles Prescott as a top 200 player last year after they committed to Notre Dame. I've said this. I don't think On 3 has an anti-Notre Dame bias in their rankings. I think there's pro-SEC bias at times. I just disagree with – I think they're not good at ranking certain positions. I think that Charles Power, and I don't mean this disrespect, I don't know the guy. I think he's pretty terrible at evaluating quarterbacks for the most part. And I think a CJ Carr ranking especially is going to look really bad. I don't know how – when you tell me you watch Noah Grubbs on film, forget what he's done at camps. You watch Noah Grubbs film and you come away thinking 3-star quarterback. I just have no use for really thinking about – Will Black's another one, Coach Bent, who they had as a number 5, top 5 player in the country. I just think he's bad at certain positions. And everyone has certain – there's positions I'm better at evaluating than others. Everybody has that. So I just don't – I just think that he's got – I think their system is bad. I think there's too few people making that system. Like, it's one thing for me to come up with an Irish breakdown top 100 because it's but when you work for a national service, there shouldn't be like primarily 1 or 2 guys doing that. It needs to be more of a group type of thing. And then one guy sort of oversees it all. I just think they're bad at certain positions, but On 3 has had several guys for Notre Dame ranked way higher than everybody else. It's just when they miss, they're embarrassing misses, like not having Kingston ranked real high. Yeah, Drake Bowen outside your top 200. Like they've had some bad ones, but they've had a lot of Notre Dame guys ranked higher, way higher than anybody else. Like way higher than anybody else. You know, they're like I said, but they weren't the only ones. 247 also ranked Drake Bowen low. Part of that is because I still believe that in a lot of ways, 247 just follows whatever On 3 does in a lot of ways. But like, you know, they eventually came around on Kingston, but remember for a while there, they had him outside the top 100. And then of course the CJ Carr one's going to look really bad the next year or two. But I don't have an issue with On 3 and that, oh, they're anti-Notre Dame bias. I don't think that at all. There's no evidence of that. So they would only drop Gregory Patrick if he went out there and they had bad film of him. I got what he was saying, but I don't think On 3 is the network that I would accuse of that. There's a lot of issues I have with On 3 as a network. I disagree a lot with their rankings. I don't respect their rankings from the standpoint of I think they're well done, but that's probably more than any other ranking service, the one that I think applies the least program bias, pro or con. I think there's like an O-line bias, like they love offensive linemen. But okay, I can live with that. I have certain positions that I kind of I'd probably have more receivers in my top 100 than other services. That's just, you know what I mean? Like, so I just a lot of issues with On 3. That's not one of them. At least so far, that hasn't been an issue of mine. So yeah, that's where I'm at on that.
Fair enough. Buy, sell, hold from B. Huey 72. We, as Notre Dame fans, need to get used to losing good players to the portal because of the talent Freeman and staff will keep stacking.
Buy.
Mm-hmm.
Buy. It's just inevitable. It's gonna happen. Like Kennedy Urlacher's a good football player. He is a really good football player. I like Kennedy Urlacher. He was buried on a very deep depth chart. Like, I'm not one of those guys when a guy commits somewhere else or leaves, you're like, yeah, he wasn't that good anyway. Like, It's okay to say that it's a loss, man. It's okay to say this guy was really good and still say, but they're going to be fine. You don't got to tear a guy down so you can feel better about him leaving your school. So, yeah, that's where I'm at. So I buy that.
Yep. Buy, so hold. National media will finally admit that Notre Dame has talent to compete with anyone in the nation.
We'll get there. We'll get there to that point. I think this is the year. I still say that Notre Dame is very close to being there, but I still say right now they'd probably say, yeah, they'd be big underdogs of Texas. They'd be underdogs. They're not there quite yet, but I think that right now, outside of the top 4 or 5 teams, I think that they are right now think Notre Dame can beat anybody outside the top 3 or 4. I still just don't think they think Notre Dame could beat the top 3 or 4. But I think get to the semis or the championship game again this year, and that changes completely. Changes absolutely completely, in my opinion.
If Notre Dame's passing offense can evolve the way that we think that it will, I think that narrative will change rather quickly.
Agreed.
If I'm being honest with you, because the biggest takeaway from Notre Dame, I have a lot of friends who aren't Notre Dame fans, like they're fans of other schools. And when they talk to me about the team, it's always the same conversations. Yeah, man, it's just their style of play can't compete with the Oregons and the Ohio States. And, yeah, they have a really good defense and they're big and they have a good run game. But what if you stop that? If Notre Dame can become, like we believe that they can, a more balanced offense, I think that narrative is going to change really quickly amongst the national media. I do.
Yeah, because why couldn't Notre Dame beat Georgia the first 2 times they played? Because Georgia was good enough to shut down their run game, and as good as Notre Dame's defense was, it wasn't quite good enough to beat that. But they just said, hey, we're going to stop your run game and make you beat us on the football.
Yep.
And that's why Notre Dame is like, yeah, okay, they beat them this year, but that's why they're 1-2 overall against Georgia. Instead of 2-1 or 3-0, which is honestly they should have been in those 3 games. They should be 3-0 against Georgia. But it's because they're at the quarterback position, they couldn't make the plays, and the receiver position, they couldn't make the plays in those clutch moments. They said, we're not going to let you beat us with Josh Adams in this O-line. They couldn't. We're not going to let you beat us running the football in 2019, and they couldn't. Defense gave them every opportunity to win that game. I mean, and they just couldn't get it done. And to your point, if the pass game evolves, then I think that changes. Because they're now more physically able to compete with Georgia in the trenches than they were in 17 and 19.
Yes. I'll say that passing offense, or if Notre Dame in those big games can score more than like 28 points as a cap. Like you go back and you look at the bigger games that they played in this past year. They scored 23 against A&M. Louisville, they broke 31, but national media is not looking at Louisville the same way that we looked at Louisville.
Thanks to a 4-yard drive. I mean, you had a 4-yard field for one of your touchdowns, right?
But then in the first round of the playoffs, they scored 27 against IU. They scored 23 against Georgia. They scored 27 against Penn State. They scored 23 against Ohio State. Even if I believe that if Notre Dame were to lose like to Ohio State, but if they lost in a game where it was like maybe 35-31, not 34-23, or if, they beat Penn State 31-24, I think the narrative could change a little bit, but I still think passing offense elevating is key to that.
I think if Ohio State would have beaten Notre Dame this year by the exact same score, but in a more competitive game, I think the narrative would have changed to a degree as well.
Sure.
Meaning like it's a back and forth game. Notre Dame needs one more stop to get the ball back with a chance to tie. And, and then they get the field goal. That to me, it would have been different with the same outcome when you were down 31-7 at one point in time. Like that's the difference. So if it would have been more back and forth and just Ohio State made one more stop than Notre Dame did, okay, I think that would change some things. But it was very obvious, and we've said this before, it was obvious that Ohio State's offense called off the dogs in the second half. They did.
Mm-hmm.
Defense didn't, but the offense did. And when they needed to turn it back up, they were able to hit that big play and go down and win the game. So I think it was the way that they lost, Trev, to your point, because the offense just couldn't do anything in the second quarter. And you didn't really start doing anything offensively till basically there was no more pressure on you or them because it was 31-7.
Very true. Very true. Buy, sell, hold from Reese's Christ. Notre Dame will never drop below 8th in the AP or coaches poll this year.
Buy. Because I think they'll start higher than that. And, yeah, I don't think that they'll fall below that. Yeah.
By so hold, Michigan will never get above 20th in the AP or coaches poll this year.
Let me look at their schedule real quick, because that's going to factor into this a little bit for me, Trev. So Big Ten, let's go Michigan, 25 schedule. So they got New Mexico at Oklahoma, Central Michigan at Nebraska. Yeah, I'm going to buy that. They'll never get above 20. There's just too many pitfalls. Like, I don't think they start the season above 20. And I don't love Oklahoma as a team, but I think they're going to beat Michigan at home in week 2. I mean, you may disagree with me on that, but I think Oklahoma at home beats Michigan in week 2. And then they've got 2 weeks later, they play at Nebraska. Then they're home against Wisconsin, then at Washington, home against Washington, home against Wisconsin at USC, home against Washington at Michigan State. So if they're sniffing top 20 coming out of Michigan State, then they'll get into the top 20, because they got Purdue at home, bye week at Northwestern, at Maryland. They got a shot to win all 3 of those before they play Ohio State. But when they got at Oklahoma, at Nebraska, home against Wisconsin, at USC, at Michigan State, home against Washington, I don't see how a team that starts the year be lower than 20 and has to play at Oklahoma in week 2 gets above 20. The only way that happens if they begin 22nd, and then after they win their opener against New Mexico, like a bunch of teams, like 4 teams ranked from 14 to 20 lose in week 1, then they jump into 20 and then they immediately fall out. I just don't see them above 20. I just don't. I'm not in love with this Michigan team. I didn't think they were that good last year. I don't think they're going to be that good this year. They're starting to acquire talent better, and that, their future is a little brighter than it was a year ago. But I think this team is not going to be good, and their schedule's pretty challenging. That's my stance on Michigan. I called them right last year, and I think they're going to be very similar this year. Yeah.
I'm actually, and this is kind of a hint to my preview of what I think when we start talking about teams nationally later in the summer. I'm going to sell this. I think Michigan is a dark horse to be a better team in the Big Ten this year. I don't think they're going to win it, but I think they're going to be better. A lot of the teams that you listed off, I don't think are going to be as good as what some people think. I think a lot of people put weight into you have to play at Nebraska. I don't know how good Nebraska is going to be. But to me, they're more of the same team year over year than what Michigan has been as of late. Now, there's a lot of different factors into that. Michigan turned over an entire coaching staff.
Right. So where's the show me with that? Where's the show me with Sharon Moore? Is it because of what he did late in the year against Ohio State and Alabama?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Right. And then as an interim head coach, you went 4-0, completely different team. Sure. But
that means nothing to me, but I get your point.
Yep. And so when you talk at Oklahoma, I understand the stigma of playing down in the SEC country. I don't know how Michigan's going to handle that, but I don't think Oklahoma's going to be that good again either.
I don't think Oklahoma's going to be a whole lot better than that, but I think they're better than Michigan. You look at Oklahoma's record last year at 6-6. Are they 6-6 in the Big Ten? I don't think so. I think they're 6-6 because they played a tougher schedule than what Michigan played, in my opinion. So that's kind of where I'm coming. They had to play Tennessee, they had to play Texas, they had to play Ole Miss on the road, they had to play Alabama, they had to play LSU on the road. I mean, that's a tougher schedule than what Michigan played. They had to play Oregon, Indiana, and Ohio State. That's
and
it.
Texas.
Did they play? They did play Texas early.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I still don't think they are. I think if they had Oklahoma's schedule, they'd have the same exact record, if not worse, than what Oklahoma had. And I don't think Oklahoma's that good. Don't get me wrong. I do like their quarterback, though. But the other thing, too, Trev, that I look at Michigan is Michigan was not very good on the road last year. Here's what's funny. The only road game they won last year was against Ohio State. It's what? What are you doing? You lost to Washington by 10. You lost to Illinois by 14. You lost to Indiana by 5. That was a competitive game. And then you got and beat Ohio State. Here's what I'll say. The only thing that gives me any hint that maybe I could be wrong is they did finish the season very well. Even the loss in their last 4 games was a good loss. Go on the road against Indiana, and you lose by 5. Now, they never had a shot to win that game. Like the final score was very misleading. They really didn't have a shot to win that game. But then they pounded Northwestern, beat Ohio State, and then beat Bama. I get that. But they also did that with Mason Graham and, some guys that are gone now. They didn't have Will Johnson and Colson Loveland, but they have a lot of guys that are gone. So we'll see. Yeah. And I think Oklahoma's had a really good offseason of portal pickups as well. And I like the OC hire they made also.
Yeah. Yeah. I think quarterback play is going to be better than what it was. And even with that quarterback play last year, they found a way to go 8-5. I love the Justice Haynes pickup.
Yeah. I love that's one of my favorite portal pickups of the offseason is Justice Haynes.
Solid. Yep. They're getting some players back in their secondary that missed last season because they were hurt. Again, when I mean dark horse, I don't mean to go win the Big Ten.
Yeah, you're talking they might win 9, maybe even sneak up and win 10. I get you. I understand what you're saying. And I think that's a fair point. I just don't agree with it. I think Oklahoma, here's the interesting about Oklahoma. This is a side point. How does Brent Venables handle being the head coach and the D coordinator this year?
Yeah.
Because I think that was a sneaky smart decision. And here's why I say that. If I'm going down, I'm going down doing it my way.
Yeah.
I'm going down doing it. I'm running this defense. I've always said this. If you're going to lose doing it your way.
Yeah.
And that's what he's doing. He's like, okay, fine. I can't get anybody else to do the defense the way I want to do it, so I'm going to do it. But like I said, I really like that OC hire that he made this offseason. I think that was one of the sneaky good moves this offseason. I don't think Oklahoma is going to be I feel it's funny. I feel about Oklahoma and the SEC the way you do about Michigan and the Big Ten. Like sneaky better than they were. Now, to me, that means 8-9 wins. It doesn't mean, they're going to win the SEC because they're not going to sniff the SEC title. Right. But the answer to what we can agree on is this, Trev. The answer to that question will be decided in week 2.
Yep.
If you're right, we're going to know it in week 2. And I would even argue that even if they go to Norman and play a hard-fought 4-quarter game where it's kind of like the Indiana game, then I'd say that's going to tell me a little something about Michigan. Because outside of the Ohio State game, they got worked in every other road game they played. Even the Michigan game, the Indiana game, they were down 17-3, almost the entire game.
Yeah.
And they had a couple plays late that made it look closer than it was. They were until that last drive when they got stopped deep in their own territory, they were never really threatening Indiana. But you can't discount the Ohio State win, and you can't discount the Alabama win. I don't care that it was a bowl game. They didn't have this guy. Look who Michigan didn't have in that game.
Yeah.
And I remind you again, look who they did have. Meaning their quarterbacks. It was still the same quarterbacks. So I don't care who Alabama was missing in that game. They still had Davis Warren at quarterback.
Yeah, I was about to say. In the battle between Jalen Milroe and Davis Warren won.
Exactly. Exactly. And I'm seeing people projecting him to be a first-round draft pick. I will never understand why the NFL is so bad at evaluating quarterbacks every single year. It amazes me.
Yeah, I don't get it either.
They continue to be so bad at this. So bad at this.
I don't get it either. The one thing I will say about Michigan is I think overall they're going to be better this year, but this is going to be the first game to Ohio State that they drop in 4 years.
Oh, they're going to get smacked by Ohio State, I think.
Yeah.
It's going to be interesting. Now I'm all excited about talking about our preseason predictions, man. You got me all fired up. This is going to be a fun offseason, dude.
It will be. It will be. Buy-sell hold from Greg Nielsen. Effectively managing an open quarterback competition is an important hurdle to clear for a first-time head coach.
Oh, bye. Yeah, I mean, those they don't happen all the time, but they happen enough, and when they do happen, they're very important. So, yes, I buy that.
Buy-sell hold within the next 5 years, we will see a rolling 105-man roster limit with schools using the transfer portal as an in-season waiver wire to replace players who are injured or leave the team.
I'm going to sell that. Is it out of the realm of possibility? Sadly, no. Nothing is out of the realm of possibility. But I don't see it getting that bad. I hope not. That's also kind of a hope buy, too. A hope sell as well. So I'm going to sell that.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. For so many reasons, I'm hope selling this. Yeah. Buy, sell, hold from Domer since birth. If the only two events that occurred differently during the 2024 college football offseason was Riley Leonard transferred to Ohio State and Will Howard transferred to Notre Dame. Then Ohio State wins a national championship. Notre Dame wins a national championship. The Field wins a national championship.
I'm going to sell Ohio State winning. I'm going to sell Notre Dame winning the championship.
Oh,
I'm going to sell the Field winning a championship. I'm going to buy Ohio State. I think Ohio State's even more convincing of the national champions if they got Riley Leonard. Because he had just been able to throw just one-on-one go balls to Jeremiah Smith and then Mecca.
Yep.
And you add that running ability to that, I don't think anything changed for Ohio State at all. I think Will Howard was on a better team. Riley Leonard was the better quarterback.
Agreed. Buy, sell, hold. If Coach Nick Saban returned to Alabama as a head coach last season, Coach Reese would have been the OC for Alabama in 2024. Coach Reese would have voluntarily found a different job for the 2024 football season. Or Coach Nick Saban would have fired Coach Reese prior to the 2024 football season.
I'm going to buy that Coach Reese would have left for the NFL. I'm going to hold that he would have been the OC for Alabama 24. I'm going to sell that he would have fired him.
We see that the same.
I mean, look. Oh, here's what I'm going to say for all the Tommy Reese haters. Jalen Milroe was a whole lot better playing for Tommy Reese than he was for Kalen DeBoer. A whole lot better. Like, if he gets drafted in the first or second round this year, it's going to be because of how he played under Tommy Reese, not what he did this past. It's going to be in spite of what he did playing under Kalen DeBoer. I mean, this year, Jalen Milroe passed for 2,800 yards, completed 64% of his passes, had 16 touchdowns, 11 picks, 8.9 yards per attempt. In his 1 year under Tommy Reese, he completed 65.8% of his throws, still had 2,800 yards, 10 yards per attempt, 23 touchdowns, 6 picks. Jalen Milroe also rushed for 531 yards under Tommy Reese and 12 touchdowns. So he had 35 total touchdowns. Had more touchdowns under Kalen DeBoer because he ran more, but he's a far less effective quarterback than he was. And he actually doubled his turnovers when you include fumbles, I believe, under Kalen DeBoer. So they're going to look back and see what he did playing for Saban and Tommy Reese in 2023, and that's what people are going to mistakenly draft him off of, which I think is still a mistake, that high. So, yeah, that's my order of those.
I don't understand, and we've talked about this on the show before. As of late, like the last couple years, I really don't get the Tommy Reese hate, man. I'm not sitting here saying that he was the best quarterback that Notre Dame has ever had, not by a long shot. But like you go and you look at his resume the past couple of seasons, he went as an offensive coordinator, 8-2 with Drew Pine as the starting quarterback. His departing gift for Notre Dame was Kenny Minchie's C.J. Carr.
And Steve Angeli.
He got hired by Nick Saban, the greatest college football coach of my generation, as an offensive coordinator. After a season where he went 8-2, it's not like Notre Dame went and won the national championship and Nick Saban was like, yeah, give me that guy. And then
he was an OC on a team that made the playoff as well in 2020.
Yeah. He gets hired by Kevin Stefanski, who, say all you want about the Browns, he's a 2-time NFL Coach of the Year award winner.
Has he won 2, really?
2020 and 2023. He gets hired as a tight ends coach and then gets promoted to offensive coordinator. Like, you guys might not like him, but I don't get the hate. Is it just because of what he did at starting quarterback from?
You know what it is? You know what I think it is? I think some of it's that, or I think a lot of it is because people like you even see it, Tommy Reese failing upward. Like, that's the whole point. He didn't fail. I mean, what was the failure he had at Notre Dame? Was it the playoff season? Was it the 11-2 year where he, coordinated an offense with a terrible offensive line and an okay defense, and Jack Cohn did what he did? Like, was it winning 9 games with Drew Pine and Tyler Buckner quarterback? What was the failure that he had? Here's what it comes down to. He had no business being hired as the offensive coordinator when Chip Long got let go. He should have worked for a year or two under a Joe Moorhead or a Todd Monken, and then took over And he got that job because Brian Kelly wanted his guy, and Brian Kelly wanted someone he thought he could control. I think people resent Tommy Rees for that. My whole thing is, what did you want Tommy Rees to do? Say no?
Yeah.
Sorry, coach, I don't want to be an OC in my 20s. No, he's going to take that job just like I would have, you would have, anybody else would have. Be mad at Brian Kelly for that, not Tommy Rees for that. Because also, Tommy Rees's first year as an offensive coordinator, they went to the college football playoffs. His second year as a coordinator, they won 11 games with Jack Cohn at quarterback and all those issues. So, look, did I think he did a great job in 2022? Sometimes, other times not so much. I've said that. I just wish people could have more of a objective opinion of him.
Yeah.
Or I'm not sitting there saying like Tommy Rees is the smartest young coach in the history of football. I'm not saying that. But I think the way that he gets the rap he's got, it's like, wow, you guys have some venom towards Tom Rees. I don't understand that. But I think I know where the root of it is. I think most of it, for some people, it's him as a player. But again, what was he supposed to say? Sorry, coach, you need to put Dane in. Dane's better than me. No, he's going to go out there and compete. Like you hate Brian Kelly for decisions or you hate Tommy Rees for decisions that Brian Kelly made.
Yeah.
Not decisions Tommy Rees made. And I don't think Tommy's an overly friendly guy. He's a very kind of, a little prickly. I personally like Tommy. I mean, I was very critical of him. And honestly, you know what I respected about Tommy Rees? He was one of the few coaches that ever would call me and say, hey, man, you said this about me. Let's talk about it. And it was never UMFer. It was never, it was like, why did you say this? And not in a, who are you? But like we had a conversation one time, I can say it now, where he was told that I said Notre Dame should not be going to the portal for players when they landed Kane Madden. He called me. We talked about it. And I said, well, whoever told you that's lying to you because I want you to go get that corner from Tulsa. My issue is with him. I don't think he's very good. So we had a conversation about it. We had a conversation about a couple other things where we disagreed, but there was a level of, okay, I get where you're coming from. I get where you're coming from. I have no problem with that. And there was plenty of things that he and I didn't agree on and plenty of things I criticized him for. But you also can't ignore the successes either. I think that sometimes people get mad at him understandably because he was the reason certain position coaches were brought on, like Chancey Stuckey and some things like that. But like, again, I'm not here to be a Tommy Rees cheerleader. Like he did everything right. But I think some of the venom towards him is completely uncalled for. I think some of the issues with play calling that people have, there were times I didn't love his play calling. I actually think Tommy Rees is a really smart guy. I think he was still learning the craft of play calling. But there was also some games where, like, I still say this, the Clemson game in 2022 is still one of the best called run games that Notre Dame has had in 30 years. I mean, it was brilliant, that game. And then 2 weeks later, it's like against, you're like, what are you doing right now against Stanford? I have no idea what you're doing right now. But again, my whole thing is be critical of those games.
Yeah.
But then but also give them credit for the other games where they did really well. That's my issue. Call those games out. People pushing back to why I say think good. Yeah, but what about this game? He deserved credit. He deserved criticism for that game. Absolutely. But you also should praise him for this game over here and what they did over here. That's the whole thing. Just be honest and objective.
Yep.
That's how I look at it. So
I'm with you.
It is interesting, man. It's like he is a love him or hate him guy. You either get people acting like he was the greatest OC in the planet, or people just think, he was awful.
Oh, I know.
And Notre Dame won all those games in spite of him. It's very weird.
Yep.
And hey, I want to say something else. Somebody just said something. Tom Redinger said this: big recruiting mistakes early with Pine, Buckner, et cetera. For me, number one, Tyler Buckner was not a recruiting mistake.
No, sir.
Tyler Buckner was a big time quarterback. I also think that we are assuming that every quarterback decision was made by him. Drew Pine was committed to Notre Dame when Chip Long was the offensive coordinator. That was a Brian Kelly-driven decision. It's not a coincidence that the minute Brian Kelly gets fired, he goes out and gets C.J. Carr and Kenny Minchey. Right after that happens. Again, we're blaming the wrong person for quarterback failures. That was more of a Brian Kelly decision than Chip Long wanted. You know who Tommy Rees wanted to offer early in the recruiting process at quarterback? Cade Klubnik. Brian Kelly didn't want it. He wanted other guys. He wanted to offer Drew Aller much earlier in the process. Brian Kelly didn't. So,
cool.
Again, I think some of the things we're blaming him for were not on him. He didn't just like that snap of a finger. Brian Kelly leaves, and all of a sudden, Tommy Rees knows how to recruit good quarterbacks. That's not a coincidence. It's a Brian Kelly coincidence.
Buy, sell, hold from Robert Garzanelli. CJ Carr will be a Heisman Trophy winner, national champion, and top 3 NFL draft pick in the next 2 years.
Oh, I love your optimism, Robert. I love it. I'll say this. Look, I ranked CJ Carr as I ranked CJ Carr as a 5-star player coming out of high school. A 5-star player is capable of all these things. He just is. But I'm going to hold on Heisman winner and top 3 draft pick. I'm holding for now. Like, let me see the kid throw a single pass in college first before I'm ready to anoint him as a potential top 3 draft pick. I do think he wins a national championship because, as I have said all along, I think Marcus Freeman wins a title in the next 3 years. He was part of the reason for that. But as far as Heisman winner and top 3 draft pick, I need to see I'm pulling a Trevor. I'm holding on that. Let me see him play a little bit. The reason I'm still buying on national championship winner, because I don't think he has to play like a 5-star quarterback for them to win a title. He has to play like a 5-star quarterback for 1 and 3, not to win a title. I mean, the last 5 national championship quarterbacks are Will Howard, J.J. McCarthy, Stetson Bennett, and Mac Jones. Yeah, some of those guys are pretty good. Some of them weren't. That's kind of where I'm at, Trev. So first one, Willie Heisman Trophy winner, hold. National championship winner, buy. Top 3 NFL draft pick, hold. But if I was like, there's no way he's that good, I'd sell him. He's got the ability. Like, he hasn't done anything. Okay, Trev, let's say you and I don't know if you'd kind of evaluated him coming out of high school.
Mm-hmm.
Did you?
Mm-hmm.
Would you have disagreed strongly with my 5-star ranking of him coming out of high school?
No.
Okay. So we're on the same page with him as a high school quarterback. It's not out of question to say a 5-star quarterback has the potential to win a Heisman and be a top draft pick. It's totally fair. But as far as predicting it now that he's in college, it's like, let me see him throw a pass first. Let me see him go through his year and then find out. I don't need to see that he's going to be the 5-star I thought he was for them to win a title. If he's just good, like top 150 caliber player, good, that's going to be great for Notre Dame when you consider all the talent around him. So that's kind of where I'm at on why I'm buying that one, but not the others yet. Like somebody just said, Michael Campbell, finally Stetson Bennett, baby. Like, okay, exactly. Stetson Bennett won a title. CJ won 2. CJ Carr can win a title without being a top draft pick.
I'll say this. Is he capable of doing all these things? Absolutely. I have not seen any one of these things in my entire existence from Notre Dame.
So sad.
I've never seen Notre Dame win. I've never seen a Notre Dame player win a Heisman Trophy. I've never seen Notre Dame win a national championship. And I have not seen any Notre Dame player go top 3 in the NFL draft.
I've only seen a Notre Dame quarterback go in the first round once of my life. And that was Brady Quinn. Well, no,
Yeah.
Rick Meyer. I guess no, Rick Meyer. So I have seen a Notre Dame quarterback go top 3. Rick Meyer back in 1992. So I forgot about that one.
So I think that he is more than capable of doing these things. But again, I'm in the camp of Brian, which I guess technically is my camp. I got to see it. I got to see him at least throw a pass in a collegiate game before I can say in the next 2 seasons he's going to do these things, but he can. I think he has the ability to, but there's a long road ahead.
I'm looking at this. So you were born in 1997, right?
Yep.
So let me see here. Is Quentin Nelson really the highest drafted, or Joe Walt really the highest drafted player? Yeah, it is.
Fourth.
Because prior to that, it was Quentin Nelson at 6 and Ronnie Stanley at 6.
Mm-hmm.
Last time Notre Dame had I was right. It was 93. Rick Meyer was the quarterback in 92, but it was 93 draft. He was taken number 2 overall.
Yep.
Wow, that's crazy. That's crazy. In my lifetime, they've only had, one. Tim Brown was 6th. Let's see, 83. Of my lifetime, Trev, I've only seen one Notre Dame player taken in the top 3. And that was Rick Meyer in 1993. So, yeah, Tim Brown was an 86. He was taken 6th. Excuse me.
Mm-hmm. Buy, sell, hold with Leonard's rushing yards mostly going back to the running backs this season. Love and Price both rush for over 1,000 yards next year.
I think this is possible, Trev. And I've talked about this. Over the course of a 14-plus game schedule, I do think both of them can and will get to 1,000 yards, barring injury. I mean, Jadarian wasn't that far away from it last year. And if I'm correct in about the distribution of the carries that Riley Leonard had, combined with this being a more efficient offense that just runs more plays, without losing, I don't see with a better – I think the offensive line will be better this year than it was last year, especially at run blocking. I don't see any reason why they're going to not be better than they were last year in run blocking. Still some question marks in pass blocking because I have some Joe Rudolph questions in pass blocking.
Mm.
But run blocking, I don't know how you can watch last year. And then even the end of the 2023 season, we saw this offensive line start to really – because he finally put in offensive linemen due to injury that could actually execute the things he likes to do. But, what was it? They averaged 250-some yards a game rushing the last 3 games of the season when they made those changes on the offensive line. And I know the teams they played sucked, but they played teams that sucked during the regular season before that and didn't look as good run blocking. So run blocking part, he's going to be good. So they're not going to have fewer, I don't think, big plays next year than they did this year. You know what I mean? So, I think I buy that absolutely as a possibility. Am I betting my mortgage that it's going to happen? No, but I certainly think it's possible. In a course of a 14-plus game season, absolutely. And you don't have to sacrifice. It's not like you can't throw the football and have a pair of 1,000-yard rushers unless you're playing a super high-octane, team. Penn State last year in played 16 games. They passed for 3,600 yards, 30 touchdowns, and 10 picks, and still had 2 guys go for 1,000 yards rushing.
Yeah.
So, I'm certainly possible. Certainly possible.
Buy, sell, hold. If there are any major injuries on the offensive line, Will Black will play multiple games this season.
At tackle, I could see that. I think Will Black's going to play multiple games anyway. I think he's still going to redshirt, but I think he'll play 4. But I think what the point of what Robert's saying is he's going to actually be playing multiple games.
Yep.
I think they'd have to have and major injuries you could say are one of 2 things. One is a top player, or 2 major injuries, meaning multiple players. If they have more than 1 injury at tackle, you absolutely turn to Will Black.
Yep.
I think if they have 1 injury, you turn to Gerby Lambert. And you may consider moving Charles Jagasaw and putting Sullivan Knapp at guard and moving Jagasaw out to left tackle if Anthony Knapp gets hurt. But I think you go beyond 2, there's a good chance Will Black plays.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's moving. Once you make the decision, we're going to start Jagasaw at right guard. Once you've made that decision, then you got to say, okay, if you got to move him out to tackle to replace an injured player or somebody who's not as effective, you're now impacting 2 positions because now you're going down a step at left tackle. You may be better, or right guard, you may be better at left tackle, but is it worth, that's what you have to decide. It may be. I'm just saying that's the decision that has to go into a coach's decision-making. And I think when you've got a guy like Will Black or Gerby Lambert, you just say, hey, listen, if this guy gets hurt or this guy's not performing well, we're going to write one of these 2 dudes and then just leave the interior just to go out there and dominate the way that it has, would be what I would guess that they'll do.
Buy, sell, hold from We Are Notre Dame. Notre Dame is a top 5 NIL spender when it comes to its roster.
I'm going to hold this because I don't know the answer. I don't know what other teams are spending. I don't know the exact number that Notre Dame is spending. I will say this. If I were to have to do a buy or sell, I would buy it from the standpoint of Notre Dame is absolutely spending money in NIL with its own players and if they need to get guys. What Notre Dame is wisely doing is they're not just spending NIL money unwisely. They're not going to go out and get some solid D tackle for $1.5 million because they're desperate. They're not going to go out there and pay some quarterback in a panic move $1.5 million. They'll go out and buy a guy if they need to, or pay a guy money. Like Malachi Freeman or Malachi Fields is not coming to Notre Dame because he just thinks Marcus Freeman has the most charming personality on the planet, or because there's a scheme fit, or because he likes the offense and the young quarterbacks. He does all those things, but it's also because they made it worth it for him to come. Same with Jared Dawson. Now, Notre Dame spends much of its money on its current players, making sure they're taken care of. But yeah, Notre Dame is a big spender. Does that mean that they rank second, third, fifth, ninth? I don't know the answer to that. But they're not losing guys because of NIL. And if they have guys jump in the portal as we anticipate, I promise you it's not because Notre Dame was unwilling to pay them money or unable to pay them money. And if they're unwilling, it's because I'm not paying that much money for a guy that's third or fourth on the depth chart, or a guy that's number one, but maybe I have guys behind him that are just as good, and I'm not going to overspend to keep you if you're going to try to hold out. I'm not saying any of those things are happening. I'm just making a point. And I don't even want to say a position because people think that, but let's say a starter comes to Notre Dame and is like, hey, I want to leave if you don't pay me X amount of dollars. And, you got to match what this other school's doing, or you got to, I'm like, all right, cool, go do that. Go do what you got to do, because we're going to be just fine. So, yeah. But their current team, portal, Notre Dame's not losing players. And they're paying more in high school now, too. If they need to pay money to a high school player, they'll make it happen if they want a guy. I promise you that. Promise. They don't like to advertise that, but believe me, they're making that happen. They're not going to lose a player that they think is a program changer because of money. That's the point. Unless they're just like, dude, you're not that good.
Fair enough. Buy, sell, hold. Recruiting over 30 players in one cycle will hurt in the long term as far as keeping them.
Definitely buy. Definitely a buy. And I think he's referring to USC there. Definitely buy that one.
Buy, sell, hold from We Are Notre Dame. The defense will have a faster start to the season than the offense, meaning more steady play and discipline and concepts. Oh, this is a buy for me. There's a lot of reasons as to why. The defense, for the most part, was a pretty cohesive unit in the spring. There were some pieces that they were missing. Bubakar's got to come back. Botello's got to come back. Stroman's got to come back from all injured guys. But for the most part, the core of the defense was very much involved in the spring. Christian Gray, Leonard Moore, Don Schuler, Drake Bowen, Bryce Young, Gabe Rubio, all those guys were around and present in the spring. Notre Dame still doesn't even have a starting quarterback yet named. They whittled it down to 2, but they don't have a starting quarterback named yet. Odds are their best offensive weapon in the pass game in Malachi Fields, he's yet to step foot on campus in any practice capacity. And so they don't have an offensive line built out yet. I think the defense is just more geared to start the season a little bit more steadily than what the offense will for a multitude of different reasons. So that I buy that.
I say, Trevor, even if we both know who the starting quarterback is going to be, or even if they name the starting quarterback, I don't think that changes the answer at all.
Nope.
It's still going to be a first-time starter quarterback. So I'd be a little disappointed if the defense isn't better early in the season than the offense.
Mm-hmm.
Be a little disappointed.
Buy, sell, hold. Getting to 105 means more scholarship players being cut or pushed elsewhere than walk-ons as it stands right now.
I think it'll be about 50-50 to a degree. I mean, you've got right now you're at 116 and you've got, I think, 93 scholarship players. So, to get down to 105, I think part of it's going to be a little bit of both. It's going to be close to about even, in my opinion. You could cut all walk-ons, but there's some walk-ons that they put a lot of value on. And if I had to lean, I would lean more towards it being more walk-ons. It's unfortunate, but like the Mickey Browns, the Charles, what's his last? Is it who Dew?
Charles Dew?
Yeah. It's going to be guys like him. I mean, I think you've already started to see it. Reno Monteforte, Zach Yoakum. You're already starting to see that a little bit. Those aren't guys that would have otherwise left if it wasn't like, look, man, So, and by the way, did you see that Reno Monteforte got a full ride scholarship to Cal? Isn't that awesome? So he's going to get his master's paid for. I think that's awesome.
From Cal,
yeah.
That's such a great spot too.
Yeah.
I mean, very happy for him.
That was very cool. But yeah, I think it'll end up being more walk-ons and scholarship guys.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, like I saw he committed to Cal, and I didn't read it at first, and then I went and looked, and I read the rest of the tweet, and it said on full ride. I was like, oh, that's freaking awesome. Yeah, that's great. That's great.
Undergraduate from Notre Dame, graduate's degree from Cal. So
people have had worse academic tracks.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. Buy, sell, hold from ND Chuck. In 2027, Notre Dame signs a legit 5-star quarterback ranked at least 5-star by one of the major recruiting services.
I can't answer that because honestly, I have not looked at the recruiting rankings for any of those players outside of Peyton Houston. But let me just look up the 3 guys that I think they have a legitimate shot at. I won't say who they are, but I'll just look at their rankings real quick. Not a 5-star. That's stupid. Okay. His question is asking about recruiting services, so I have to go with that. And then the other guy, not a 5-star. So I say 5-star by me, certainly possible. Guys got to continue to improve, right? These are rising juniors. But CJ Carr wasn't a 5-star for me as a rising junior. He became one as a senior. But I'm sell that. Because of the guys I just looked at, aren't only one of them's a 5-star, and I don't think they're going to get the one guy that's a 5-star. So I'll sell that, but I think there's a chance that they get one that's ranked there by me.
Buy, sell, hold. Notre Dame signs Julius Jones Jr.
I got to hold that as well. I got to see him get to campus first. I mean, that's a big thing for me. I don't know that he's visited yet. He was supposed to visit a couple times, or did he visit once in the spring? He might have gotten once in the spring, but right now, it's a long way to go, and I don't feel great. And they haven't had a lot of success at Aquinas since the Sam Young. They had Sam Young, Dan Wenger in that class, and then they had Corey Holmes played at Aquinas. They haven't got a whole lot of guys other than that. It just hasn't been a school that they've had a lot of success at, which is a little disappointing.
Yeah,
but hopefully they can turn the table because he's a really good player. I mean, forget the fact that his dad played at Notre Dame. Like, obviously, that's a pretty cool thing, right? But just as a player, that's a big time talent. Like, you'd love to get a guy like that at that position.
Oh, yeah. Buy, sell, hold from Tom Frawley. I honestly believe the 2025-2026 Notre Dame football team has a chance to average scoring 32 points per game in the regular season.
I'm going to sell that. I think they're going to score more than that. He has another question about that. Let me see. Yeah, I'm going to sell that.
Yeah,
that would be incredibly disappointing.
I'm going to sell that, and I'd be upset if it happened.
Yeah. Yeah, Mike Denbrock probably wouldn't like me very much if they went through a whole season, regular season, and averaged 32 points a game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Buy, sell, hold. Notre Dame's team defense will allow less than the average of 133 yards rushing this coming season, thereby ranking their rushing defense in the top 25 in 2025 versus 39th in 2024.
Well, in order to get to the top 25, they've got to get down to like less than 120, 115 to 120. Last year, the number 25 team in the country was at 115.3. So you've got to shave quite a bit off. Buy that it's possible. I think Notre Dame's going to be a better run defense this year. Not because, Al Golden didn't care about stopping the run. I just think you have players that are more geared towards being run stoppers than you did last year. You're still going to have Junior, still going to have Burnham, still going to have Bryce Young, who all I think have really good potential as run stoppers. But Riley Mills and Howard Cross were pass rushers first and run stoppers second. I think the guys you have in the rotation this year, Gabriel Rubio, Jared Dawson, who's a pretty good pass rusher, but also a stout guy against the run, in my opinion. Jason Onye, Armel Mukum, maybe Sean Sevillano. Donovan Heinisch is more of a pass rusher, but that's really the only one. And then I think your linebackers are more geared towards that. So I just think overall they're going to be a better run defense this year than they were last year. So I'll buy that.
I also don't think the rushing offenses that they're facing this year are as good as what they were last year. I mean, Northern Illinois had Ontario Brown. Texas A&M called that a constant, arguably maybe even better because of their year older. But they're not playing Louisville with Isaac Brown and their loaded running back room. They're not playing both Army and Navy. USC doesn't have Woody Marks or Quentin Joyner anymore. So I think that could play a factor in it as well.
They played some good backs last year, man. They really did. Well, and the Stanford kid that I really liked was hurt that game.
Yeah.
But even the kids they had were solid backs. They played some good running backs last year.
They did.
And Georgia Tech kid was they
Jamal
played some really
Haynes
good backs last year.
Yeah, I completely forgot about him. He's back this year.
Yeah, A&M had 2 really good running backs. Yeah, they had some good running backs last year.
Buy, sell, hold. The overall 2025 Notre Dame team defense will allow less than 354.6 yards per game as they did in 2024.
So they ended up – so I wonder if he's referring to regular season, but they were at let's see Notre Dame. They're definitely going to be less than 354 because they were at 307 last year and they were at 276 the year before that. So I definitely 354 would rank them barely inside the top 50, if in the top 50. So I'll buy that. I think he might have meant 254.
I was about to say 354 sounds like their offensive.
I think he was looking at Ohio State's number because Ohio State was number 1 last year at 254.6. I think he meant 254.6 as opposed to 354.6 is what I think he meant by that. So I'm going to sell that because I think they play better offenses this year than they did last year. If they're less than 300, I'm happy. That's a solid defense. If they're around less than 280, then they're really good. That's how I because I think the offensive schedule this year is a little better than last year. They played some really bad offensive teams last year.
I also think just the flow of the game is going to favor the defense a little bit more. I think you're going to have an offense this year that's going to be able to sustain drives a little bit better than last year's offense, which was for a good chunk of the season, like pretty feast or famine, and even in some of the drives where they were putting together scoring drives, there was always like a 50 some odd yard run from Jeremiah Love, and the defense was on the field quite a bit last year. I still think they're going to have big plays, but I don't know if they're going to go on their, scoring droughts of a quarter and a half long that they did last season.
Even against teams that weren't that good, they'd go on stretches like that.
Mm-hmm. Buy, sell, hold from the Immaculate Extension.
Hold on a second. So first of all, when I first saw this name, I was like, all right, it's an interesting name. Whatever. But then I looked above and looked at the avatar on the board, and it's a picture of Jeremiah Love on the extending the ball against Penn State. And I'm like, okay, that's a freaking cool name for that play, the Immaculate Extension. So very well done with their creativity. I know people think it's dumb that I talk about, but I just am not creative when it comes to those kind of things. So when I see people that have really creative names, I just think it's cool because it's not something that I'm good at. So it's I really appreciate it. But yeah, that's a great handle. And he's got the picture of Jeremiah Love. It's a picture of him extending the ball over the pylon. It's a great picture. Very well done with this name. So anyway, back to his buy, sell, hold submission.
Yep. The Notre Dame offense has at least 5 players drafted after this next season.
Yeah. I mean, way more than 5. I think I was even talking with this about with a draft expert and who confirmed kind of what we're the next 2 draft classes are going to be way better. I don't know that next year's is going to be huge numbers wise, but if it is, it's because Notre Dame won a ton of games. But you're going to have 2 running backs potentially. You're going to have a tight end who hopefully is coming off of a big year, who gets drafted. You're going to have a receiver, 2 receivers. Both portal receivers are going to be out. Maybe an offensive lineman leaves, not a given. But Rubio has a chance. Onye has a chance. Junior Tulamaka's eligibility is over. I don't know if he's a draft guy, but in there, does Jalen Sneed or Drake Bowen or one of those guys break out? Don Schuler potentially. I mean, there's Devontae Smith is a guy that I could see getting drafted. It may not be a big year, but it's going to be a some high picks. But 2 years from now, if next year's draft class isn't huge, it's because a lot of the Drake Bowens, all the offensive linemen, all those guys that can come back. And then you're going to go into the 2027 draft, and it's going to be Jaden Greathouse. It's going to be Burnham. You're going to be going with Leonard Moore, Christian Gray, Adon Schuler, Drake Bowen. I mean, the draft class after the 26 season, so the 27 draft is going to be loaded.
It's going to be nuts. It's going to be nuts.
Loaded. Yeah.
By so hold, the Notre Dame defense takes a step back in passing yards per game allowed and completion percentage, but it improves in rushing yards allowed per game and per attempt.
I buy that. I think that's actually what will happen. I don't think they'll be quite as good because the zone team is willing to give up a few more yards. Quick game, short game, limit some of the big plays. And part of that's because you want to get more guys potentially in the box. So I buy that.
Yeah.
I buy that.
Yeah. I mean, and as far as completion percentage is concerned, they finished number 1 in the country. I mean, that a step back.
Nowhere to go but down.
Yeah.
Yeah. You finish second, you're like, bums. He's no Al Golden, that's for sure.
Buy, sell, hold from Sokolowski.
Yeah, A. Sokolowski.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay, good deal. Buy, sell, hold Notre Dame ceiling this year is higher than Ohio State's, Georgia's, and Alabama's.
This is going to sound crazy, but I'm buying that. And I don't even think that's a homer take. I mean, I think Notre Dame Notre Dame went and was competitive against Ohio State last year. Bad start, finished strong. The second half is more like how that game should have gone. Ohio State's still better, but you're better than what you showed. But Ohio State lost way more from that team than what Notre Dame lost. Way more. And while I still think Ohio State's going to be really good, I still think they're the team to beat in the Big Ten. I do. That doesn't mean that they're going to win it. Penn State's capable of beating them. Oregon's capable of beating them. Trev thinks Michigan's going to beat them and win the Big Ten. That's what I thought I heard you say earlier, correct?
Took the words right out of my mouth, man.
Going to win the Big Ten again. But I still think Ohio State, yes, they lose players, but they lost Will Howard. Who are they replacing him with? A former 5-star recruit, who I thought Julian Samuel was overrated as a 5-star. I still have him as a top 100 guy. Still really good. They're not going to be as good at running back, but they're still going to be good at running back. James Peoples, CJ Donaldson, that's still a good running back room. They still have the best receiving core in college football. I don't think they're going to be as good at tackle this year as they were last year, but I don't think those guys are bums. Their interior offensive line, all the injuries they had last year got those guys a ton of experience. They're going to be good there. They have a good O-line coach. Defensive line-wise, you lose JT and Jack Sawyer, and you replace them with Edric Houston and Kenyatta Jackson. And, I mean, you're replacing them with really good football players. D-tackle I'm a little bit more concerned about. You lose Cody Simon, who's a heck of a player, and you replace him with Arvell Reese, who's a really good football player. I mean, you lose Denzel Burke, and I think you replace them with a better athlete, to be honest with you. So I think they're going to be really good again. The concern that I have is the turnover in coaching turnover. That's the bigger concern for me. And I'm not sold on Matt Patricia. If Matt Patricia's better than I think he's going to be, then I still think Ohio State's a top 4 team at the end of the year. I still think they have a shot to be that. They're just going to be a lot younger. The margin for error is going to be a little bit smaller. And I still have doubts about Ryan Day as a head coach. I mean, with all that talent he had last year, the guy still lost 2 freaking games last year, so but I think Notre Dame's got a better roster than all 3 of those teams. I mean, one of them they already beat. I think Alabama presents some matchup challenges for Notre Dame because they're one of the few teams who has a receiving core, along with Ohio State, that can give them problems. But I think Notre Dame presents a whole lot more matchup challenges for their defense than their offense presents to Notre Dame's defense. So, yeah, I think Notre Dame has a higher ceiling than all 3 of those teams. And the other thing, too, Trev, is all 3 of those teams have brand-new quarterbacks, just like a Notre Dame does. And that's why people are like, well, 26 really the year that I'm focused on. Well, why? Well, that's because, they're going to be year 2 of a starting quarterback. Well, so will Ohio State. So will Oregon. So will Texas. So will Georgia. So will Alabama. So will Ohio State. Like everybody's, except Penn State, has brand new quarterbacks this year. So I don't want to hear that excuse. If Ohio State makes a deeper run than you, I don't want to hear, well, it's first year. Well, they have a first-year redshirt freshman quarterback too. So I don't want to hear it, who I think is not as good as the guy you have. So, yeah, I do. I think that Notre Dame – this is funny at the press conference. You saw it, Trev. Where somebody asked Marcus Freeman about the team. He's like, I'm not going to – I've matured a little bit since last year when I said this is going to be the most talented. And somebody says, like, well, it was. Like, you were right, But I do think as good as last year's team was, I think this team is going to be even more talented because you're going to be younger and less experienced than you were a year ago at some places. But your talent level is going to be better. You're bringing in a great freshman class. This might be your best portal class yet if you take quarterback out of the equation. Malachi Fields, Will Pauling, Devontae Smith, Jared Dawson, Jalen. This is a heck of a portal class. And all your really talented freshmen and sophomores are now really talented juniors and sophomores. So I think this Notre Dame team has an incredibly high ceiling. And I would argue that it's at the very least as high as those teams, but I'd argue it's higher. Right? Notre Dame whooped Georgia last year, and they got way more talent coming back than Georgia does. Georgia was way more hit by NFL departures than Notre Dame was. And one of the studs that was supposed to step in for Jalen Walker and Michael Williams left for Missouri. And Damon Wilson. So, yeah, I wouldn't trade their quarterback room for Notre Dame's, receiver room, tight end room. Tight end room's pretty good. Their depth, that's the one where they're, okay, we can have a conversation there. I wouldn't trade their O-line for Notre Dame's O-line, their quarterbacks, running backs. I wouldn't trade their D-line. Last year's D-line I'd have took that one. This year, nope. Linebacker room, it's close. I would take Notre Dame's. Somebody wants to come tell me that they take Georgia's. All right. Okay, cool. I get that. I'm not going to argue with that. Secondary, not even close. Not even close. Their best DB is at the same position as Notre Dame's best DB, and he's not as good as Notre Dame's best DB. And I'll take Christian Gray over Daniel Harris any day of the week. And Georgia offered a Don Schuler a lot of money to try to come there this year. So you tried to buy their best returning safety and couldn't do it. So, yeah. So I buy that. Like when I first read it, Trev, I had like my pre-Marcus Freeman been covering Notre Dame for a long time. I was like, come on, bro. Like this is a little bit homerish. And then I started thinking about it and I was like, dude, I'm buying that. But yeah, my gut when I first put it in, Trev, was to sell it. Because like, come on, man. Georgia, Alabama, Ohio State. No, come on, man. But think about it. Go through the roster. Tell me where they're better.
Yeah.
Some spots here, Ohio State clearly has a better receiving core than Notre Dame's. I wouldn't trade any other offensive position groups for Notre Dame's. That's only one.
Mm-hmm.
And the gap this year is a whole lot closer than it was a year ago, in my opinion, because of Malachi Fields mainly. And your young guys are also older, just like theirs are. But they lost Emeka Egbuka. There's not an upgrade there. You're still going to be really good, though. Whereas Notre Dame's upgrading over the guys they lost.
Yeah, true.
At that position, in my personal opinion. So yeah, I'm buying it. What say you, Trev?
No, I'm in the same boat as you are. For that reason, exactly. Like the guys that Ohio State has to replace aren't comparatively as high of ceiling guys as what Notre Dame brought in to replace their guys. Now you can have arguments about returners. You know what I mean? Like I love Malachi Fields. I'm going to take Jeremiah Smith over him. I love a Don Schuler. But if somebody asked me, hey, you have to pick one of Caleb Downs or a Don Schuler, conversation to be had there.
I'd take Caleb Downs, but yeah. I don't know that I'd take their other safety over.
Well, exactly.
No, the rest of it's like the entire depth chart. It's like there may be a position where I say, okay, their best guy at linebacker is better than anybody that Notre Dame has. But it's Notre Dame's way better at 2, 3, and 4, and 5. And that's the thing. Like, there's no doubt in my mind that Ohio State has the best safety between Notre Dame and Ohio State. Yeah. But I like Notre Dame's. But Notre Dame's number one is still pretty good. But Notre Dame is better, in my opinion, at 2, 3, 4, and 5.
Yeah, and also Ohio State. You could put any team up against Ohio State in that category. You know what I mean? Like, that's not even Notre Dame specific. I mean, I'm taking Caleb Downs over every single other safety in the country. You know,
but Notre Dame doesn't have a slouch there with him.
Agreed.
It's like, but to your point, it's after that because they lost. I mean, they're going to still be good there. Don't get me wrong, but it's not so much about diminishing Ohio State because I think I've been very like, dude, Ohio State's not going to take the drop off that some of these people think they are. I've been on that for a while because I know what's coming for Ohio State. It's more so it's about Notre Dame's talent is better than what I think people think it is at certain spots. That's more of where I'm coming from.
Fair enough.
But if we're going to do like an all-star team of Notre Dame's DBs and Ohio State's DBs, there's going to be more Notre Dame guys on it than Ohio State guys on it this year.
Yeah. I mean, the only player I'm taking from Ohio State's defensive backfield is Caleb Downs. Like, literally, that's the only one. And then you could even make the argument that he would then just slot in with the 3 other Notre Dame starters.
Could you imagine if they'd have got him out of the portal? If he would come to Notre Dame, been with Xavier last year, now it's him and Don with the corners they have. Oh, my goodness. Whew.
I mean, yeah. Yeah, that'd be nuts. Yeah. That would be nuts.
Somebody in the chat said, Christopher Hardy said, I agree. Notre Dame has depth for days at almost every position except receiver and quarterback. I strongly disagree with that. Notre Dame has a lot of depth at receiver. We just don't know how good the receivers are going to be. They're just not proven. But, you know, you've Malachi Fields, Jaden Greathouse, Jordan Faison, Will Pauling, KK Smith, Cam Williams, Micah Gilbert, Logan Saldate, Elijah Burris, Scrap Richardson. That's 10 guys that are pretty athletic, talented guys. They're just not proven. Notre Dame doesn't lack depth at wide receiver. They lack what's the impact talent going to be. So I think people are still thinking about what we saw in the spring and forgetting the fact that there was no Malachi Fields, there was no Jordan Faison, there was no Micah Gilbert. Like, there's a lot of guys missing from that. So you could say they're not proven there, but even then I would disagree with that. Notre Dame returns at receiver this year, a guy that has had over 1,600 yards and over 100 catches the last 2 years in Malachi Fields. Notre Dame returns another receiver or will have another receiver on the roster this year that also had over 1,000 yards the last 2 years combined in Will Pauling. Notre Dame also returns a guy at receiver that had over 230 yards or had over 220 yards in the semifinal and national title game to go with 13 catches and 3 touchdowns in the national semifinals and national championship game. And we haven't got to the fact that they've got Jordan Faison, who has about 600 or so yards receiving the last couple of years. There are not a lot of teams that have guys in their receiving core that have that kind of production the last 2 years. There aren't. So I disagree that they don't have proven production. You could argue they don't have proven production in a Notre Dame uniform, which Trevor has made, but these are still known commodities. As I said, this isn't, to your point earlier about Joey Aguilar. He's going from a group of 5 team to a place like Tennessee. It's a fair thing to say. But Malachi Fields is going from an ACC school to Notre Dame, who half their schedule is against ACC schools. And they're getting a guy from the Big Ten who had 100 yards in a bowl game 2 years ago against an SEC team that you and I both have as a preseason top 15 team. So I don't agree that it's not a proven. I think there's a lot of teams that would say, I'd love to have Notre Dame's problem of lack of production, proven production. I don't know that anyone's proven to be elite, but there's guys that have certainly shown that they can be good. Notre Dame has 4 receivers coming back with at least one 100-yard receiving game in their careers. 4. Jordan Faison, Jaden Greathouse, Malachi Fields, Will Pauling. How many teams have that? Not a lot. And then quarterback, again, there's a lot of teams that would love to have Notre Dame's lack of depth at quarterback. Now, if you want to talk about lack of proven production, totally fine, but that's not depth. There's a difference. Like last year, Notre Dame had great depth on the offensive line. It just wasn't proven, but it had great depth. It's just not proven. But the thing I love about this year, Trev, for Notre Dame is a lot of teams have that problem.
Yeah.
All the teams on that list right there have that problem at certain positions.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
You think about that. Like they have 2 guys coming back that have over 1,000 yards receiving the last 2 years. That's proven production.
Buy, sell, hold from bracketed cover 3.
Bracket D, cover 3. I said it the same way you did at first, but then I was like, bracket D, cover 3. Okay, that makes way more sense.
It does. It flows better.
I said the same thing you did when I first read this as well. So not throwing shade at you. It took me a while to figure it out. And then I was like, oh, that actually is pretty cool.
It makes a lot more sense that way. That's for sure. Buy, sell, hold. Given Notre Dame likely loses 2 running backs to the draft and at least 1 to the portal, Notre Dame needs to land 2 running backs in the 2026 class.
I buy that. And they're trying to. They're trying to get 2 running backs in this class as well. They're not going to force the issue because I think if they can't get a good second back that they like, they'll just go to the portal. But yeah, they're trying to get 2 running backs in this class. And I think they need to.
Yeah.
I think they need to.
Buy, sell, hold. Adequate pass protection for the Notre Dame starting quarterback might be the biggest challenge to the Notre Dame passing game efficiency in 2025.
I'll buy that. I mean, that's probably my big. I mean, obviously, need to see CJ Carr do this and do that and all that. But I think he'll figure that out eventually. But over the course of the season, the only thing that concerns me about the offense is can they protect the quarterback? That's the biggest concern that I have on this team. Biggest concern that I have.
Mine as well.
Very fair.
Mine as well. For all the conversations about all the proven production they have coming back at receiver, whoever the starting quarterback is going to need time to give it to him. Buy, sell, hold again from bracket D, cover 3. There we go. Coach Mike Mickens is the most valuable assistant coach on the Notre Dame staff, not only for his obvious excellent recruitment, development of cornerbacks, but also his excellent development of safeties over a short period of time. Never thought I would see this level of cornerback play at Notre Dame in my lifetime.
When I point to you, I want you to answer first.
No, I'm thinking.
Okay. Like, how's he not getting this? What do I got to do? Trev,
Well,
you.
Hold up a sign. I'm going to buy this for how long that he's done it, because I was really close to selling it because of Mike Denbrock. I really was, because the way, like, what Notre Dame's defense what Notre Dame's team has needed over the last couple of seasons has been a dynamic offense. And I think Mike Denbrock helps bring that to the table. Not saying that he's the only offensive coordinator in the world that could help Notre Dame get to that level, but I was really close to selling this. But Mike Mickens has now strung together 3-4 really good years of all the things that you've mentioned. I believe that Mike Denbrock will get there, but I think this would be more of an interesting conversation. Like, let's say if Mike Denbrock has been there for the same amount of time as Mickens. So I say all that to say I buy this. Yeah, I'll buy it.
Agree.
Buy, sell, hold from Ramble On. If we only average 32 points per game in the regular season, then this year would be a complete disappointment with multiple losses, in my opinion. I feel like we need to be in the 39 to 42 range to feel confident about a deep playoff run or a national championship. Nice. I would buy this. 32 points per game. To be honest with you, I don't know if it results in multiple losses in the regular season because of how good the defense is still going to be, in my opinion. But I think averaging 32 points per game is not going to fare well for you in the national champion or in the playoffs, because like we've talked about before, you're going to take a dip. Notre Dame scored an average. I mean, Notre Dame didn't break over 30 points per game in the playoffs. And then at the end of the regular season, they went on a stretch of scoring over 40 points a game in like almost every single game. So it'll dip. So I buy that they need to be higher going into the playoffs, but I don't know if it would result in multiple losses in the regular season.
Yeah, I agree with you, Trev. I believe Notre Dame would still win a lot of games if they're 11 games if they're scoring 32 points a game.
Mm-hmm.
But what they would be then is they'd be like every other good team in the past where once they get to the postseason, they get whooped.
Yep.
I mean, look, 2021 or 2020, Notre Dame scored 33.4 points per game and went undefeated in the regular season. You know, I mean, 2018, Notre Dame made the college football playoff, scored 31.4 points per game that season. Like, we've seen this before. And I mean, even in 2015, they were only at 34. But that would mean that they're going to be one and done, two and done in the playoffs. But so where I don't think that they need to be at 39 to 42 necessarily. If Notre Dame's scoring 36, 37 points a game next year, but they're consistently doing it because they don't have any 66 and 70 point outbursts, and that's why they're there, that's fine. You know, look, it's really about, can you get to, here's the thing, it's the 32 number needs to be their postseason points per game average. Like that's where it could be. But here's where I buy it, Ramble On. I absolutely buy that 32 points per game in the regular season would be a complete disappointment with multiple. Yeah. I just don't agree with the multiple losses. Because their defense is elite, and there's not a lot of teams that I still think could score more than 32 on, you know what I mean? Like, it won't result in a lot of losses. It's just going to give us no confidence going into the postseason that they can make a run. The only thing that would may say is, like, let's say to start the season off, they win the first game of the year, like 17-14. They beat A&M at home 13-10. You know, they beat Purdue 27-7, and then they go on the road and beat Arkansas like 16-13. And like, we're sitting here going into through 4 games, and they're averaging like 15 points a game, 16 points a game. And then to finish with 32 then means they scored a bunch of points that in, like, they're really scoring like 45 in November or something like that. Then I say, okay, cool. The overall number looks bad because of the start, but they're rolling now. But I think overall I'd probably say 32 would be a very disappointment. I definitely think they will be in the 39 to 40. I'd say probably 38 to 42 range is where I think they'll be. I just don't think they need to be there to make a deep playoff run. I care more about consistency. Yeah. If they're at 37 points a game and they're just consistently really good on offense. I mean, let's not forget Ohio State last year averaged like 35 points a game. Like on the season, they finished 35.7. Okay. So if you look at their production, I think the regular season, they were at, so we got 571 minus what they did in the postseason. So that's minus 62, minus 83, divided by 12. They were at 35.5 in the regular season, and they won a title. All right, they lost 2 games, but again, that's because you need to they weren't consistent. They would score a bunch of points one week and then score 10 against Michigan, score a bunch of points one week and score like 21 against Nebraska. It's that consistency. So you can score 35 and win a title. We just saw that. Michigan was not necessarily like an offensive juggernaut in 2023. Their numbers were pretty good, but they were 35.9. The last 2 national titles winners finished the year averaging in the 35s in points per game. So, I think it's certainly possible that Notre Dame could be at 35, 36 points per game next year and make a deep run. But it's got to be steady. But what were those teams really good? What's true about both of those temes?
Great defenses.
Great defenses. Exactly. And they had quarterbacks that stepped up in clutch moments in the postseason. I'm not a big JJ McCarthy fan. Not. That kid was money in the fourth quarter against Alabama 2 years ago. Money. Like, really good in the fourth quarter of that game. And Will Howard last year. I'm not a big Will Howard fan, but you know what? Will Howard was great in the postseason.
Sure was.
Great in the postseason. Can't discount that. Can't take whatever I thought about him coming in. You can't ignore what he did. You can't in the postseason. And I think Notre Dame is that's kind of where I see this team being. So, yeah, good stuff, man. That was really, really good submissions today, Trev. Very good submissions. But that is the final one. So Why don't you tell people what's going on later today? Because they're not done with you yet.
Nope, sure not.
I'm done. Trevor's not.
In about 10 minutes, I'm hopping on with Sean Stiers, and we're going to be going over some of the comments that Marcus Freeman made in the evening show tonight during his press conference. Then afterwards, him and Jesse are going to be doing a little bit of rapid fire. So that starts here in about 10 minutes.
I think that's Bush League. I think you need to talk to Sean. The funnest part of his show as a guest is the rapid fire. You don't even get to do the fun part. I'd talk to him about that if I were you.
I'll file a complaint with his boss.
You're going to find a sympathetic ear with your boss, I think.
Well, listen, folks, before you get out of here today, be sure to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, share this podcast with your friends and family. Whichever platform you listen to this on, we'd greatly appreciate a 5-star review. Brian and I will be back tomorrow at 1, 2 o'clock.
That's the plan right now is 1.
1 o'clock?
Yeah,
all right, we'll be back.
Still got a little bit of construction, but I think we should still be good by 1 o'clock.
Cool. Well, we'll be back tomorrow at 1 o'clock to keep talking more Notre Dame football and keep covering the off season. And then I will see you guys here in about 9 minutes when I hop on the evening show with Sean Stiers. But until then, oh my goodness, I completely lost my train of thought. I'm focusing on until then.
That's Trev. I'm Brian. Have a great day. Talk to you again tomorrow on the Irish Breakdown Podcast.